rather deep mess that the players got themselves into. And then Derby were very strong in their stance straight off, weren't they? They were talking about getting to the bottom of it, the harshest possible sanctions. And then it dies down a little bit, doesn't it? We see the players, both in Lawrence and Bennett, come back into the fold, dip the toe back into it. Response from the supporters. It would be nice to say it was lukewarm. It wasn't that at all. They were booed by their own fans when they were reintroduced, when names were called out over the tannoy for the games that they were getting involved in after the actual incident. But the Keogh thing that came out last night, I think there is an element of surprise across the board. I think if you're chatting to the person in the street who's viewing football, as we sometimes can be prone to, as this mystical beast where the morality of it is out the window. Players are paid millions of pounds and they don't care and they're not bothered and all they do is turn up and get paid. Then they're saying, well, he was asked to go from allegedly 24, 25 grand a week down to a fraction of that, which, again, the person in the street saying, well, give me a fraction of 25 grand a week and I will quite happily do whatever you want me to do.
Give me 10% of
exactly, that. And we'll crack on with that. Now, the murky part about it is I've signed professional football contracts. I've signed contracts which, with the best one in the world, you've got your agent there, you might have a lawyer, a representative there. You pretty much sign where you're told to sign. You without sounding too cynical about it, it's X amount a month or X amount a year for this amount of years. You get this if you do this well, you get that if you do that well. And you kind of understand that there's an arbitrary set of rules about representing the club in the right possible way.
Yeah.
And you've got a fairly decent grasp of that, as you should, as a normal human being. The things that would bring the club into a bad light, you're going to get a kick up the backside for. This is the extreme element of that. They're also, and it is where people's lives are put at risk, not just the players that were in the car, but God forbid if anyone else, an innocent bystander, was involved in any of this, then the consequences could have been tragic and ongoing for a very, very long time. But now we're in the position where it feels that with Lawrence and Bennett, they are younger players. They have got the potential perhaps to be players that could make a lot of profit for Derby. Now, with Richard Keogh being the age that he is, the injuries that he's got, it's hard enough coming back from these injuries when you're in your early 20s, but when you're in your early 30s, moving into your mid-30s, when you're talking about over a year out, then to come back into the team to do whatever you could possibly do at that age after being out for that long, then that's where the worth of the player has been put in. There's been plenty of... and Mick McCarthy jumped to his defence when it all first happened. We've seen reports from Jeff Hendrick, haven't we?
Harry Arter as well.
Arter going to it, because what it's seen as, when you look at it in black and white, is... And again, this is me. This is in no way a staunch defence of who was involved, because all three of them were banged to rights. But the one that wasn't driving, the one that can't drive, the one that was left unconscious in the back of a car,
having potentially sustained life-threatening injuries
by a roadside. I mean, that split-second decision of fight or flight where the two players have gone, then if you look back and think, well, your first thought would be, if someone's lying in the back of a car that's crashed unconscious, I sincerely hope he's not dead. And then you've got to work your way back from that, haven't you, really? Surely there's an element of being a friend and a teammate, a human being, and going, that's got to be checked first.
What did they do? You're right, Rich.
Yeah, and no
See
answer.
you in the morning.
No, exactly. So then they've come back, and he's the one, out of all of this, that's been beaten with it all the most. Yes, there's an element of being a captain. I understand this mythical captaincy thing in football infuriates me sometimes, because yes, he's 30 odd years old. Doesn't mean to say that he's more sensible, is cleverer than the rest of the team. His intelligence level is that much more developed because he's that much older. These players know exactly what's right and what's wrong.
And we also skew it, don't we, in the sense that 33 in the scale of the world is not very old.
Not at all.
In footballing terms, you're a veteran.
Yep. And
in human terms, you're not actually that mature.
Any of the big... I mean, if you had somebody that was with a hefty level of responsibility, a hefty level of respect, late 20s, early 30s, that I'm not saying there'd be some kind of wonderkind, but they would be seen in other industries as really ahead of himself or themselves at this moment in time, aren't they? Whereas in this, yes, he's played for his country, yes, he's been part of the furniture at Derby and a team that's perennially been trying to get back to the Premier League and sometimes getting near it, other times not getting near it. So then he's been put in the position. I mean, like we said, I mean, the figures of whether it goes from 25 grand a week down to 10 grand a week, down to 5 grand a week, still don't compute with what somebody who goes to pay and watch Derby. We all know they earn a lot of money, but when you see it written down, it still makes you wince a little bit. Go, ooh, really? For a team that's
You're complaining about 100 grand a year, which in the scale of the nation is gargantuan.
For a team that, like I said, has flattered to deceive. It's been well documented that group of players has been very well paid in Championship standards over the course of the last 10 years, but haven't got back into the Premier League.
Keogh is reportedly going to appeal the decision. This one's going to run and run. When he was offered that reduction to his salary or a sacking, it feels a bit like a pride thing, where he's gone, no, stick your money. Because what he's been offered is 100 grand a week, 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, whatever it might have been, or no money. And no money from any other football club, because no one's going to sign you with the injuries you've got. He has basically gone no, presumably because he's angry. He's angry that the club are willing to throw X amount of money at Wayne Rooney when they won't support him in the same way through his rehab. And you can see where that frustration comes from. And the point was actually made to me out there by Kieran Wellington of The Breakfast Show on Love Sport Radio when I gave the argument of, oh, well, come on, 100 grand a year, cry me a river. He said, but hang on a minute, if you've been operating financially on 1.3 million a year, you're going to have financial commitments that require you to be closer to 1.3 million than 100 grand a year. There is an important angle to that. But I'm just going to read you some of the wording of the Derby statement on this. They say, as we have said from the outset, the club will not tolerate any of its players or staff behaving in a manner which puts themselves, their colleagues and members of the general public at risk of injury or worse, which brings the club into disrepute. No argument. Richard Keogh did that 5 times over. But Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett did it 10 times over. And I am sorry, if those are the grounds on which you are being dismissed for gross misconduct, bang on, sack him. But you sack the other two.
Absolutely.
You have to sack the other two. And we're going to be talking to an employment lawyer on this later in the show, which I think is going to be fascinating because I'm a million miles away from a legal expert. But I genuinely don't understand how he can't just take them to court and go, why have you not sacked the other two? On that, Keogh's wife has described him as a professional scapegoat. Do you think that's fair?
It does seem to have borne the brunt of what the reaction to this is. No one in this covers themselves in any form of glory. The fact that as I said, when Derby reacted the morning after very swiftly in the kind of language that was very black and white, they said exactly what they thought about the situation, exactly how they hoped to proceed to handle it. Then if you backdate it, it was a club-sanctioned team night out. The kind of periphery around it was staff were there at the same time earlier on in the evening, and it was they were infuriated at the fact that Richard Keogh and several others have led players out on a drinking, no, they call it rampage or whatever it was, cracking on late into the night to get more drinks under the belt. Which we've all been there when a night's escalated. I mean, not to this extent, but in the sense of that split second where should I go home at 11 or shall I stay out? Let's stay out for a little bit longer. And suddenly this is happening at the end of it. But all the kind of, and we've all seen the clips of videos, the pictures and stuff. It wasn't just 3 people there. Yes, he was, and the thing is, Richard Keogh was named. He was one of the first ones named. Understandably, perhaps with Lawrence and Bennett, legally they couldn't name them because of the investigation, the fact that they'd been arrested. Richard Keogh's was the first name launched out. So what?
Throwing under the bus, John.
No. I mean, he quite obviously he shouldn't have been in that position. Quite obviously, ending up in that position was the worst case scenario for that specific night out. God forbid, like I said, if anything else fatal had happened. But being in the position where it was, because then the narrative's out, then it becomes able for a club to be able to do this, almost kind of hold him to ransom and say, well, you know what I mean? Either play the nice guy, stick around, drop your wages, and try and kind of redeem yourself in the eyes of the broader footballing public, or we'll offer you this. It looked like you're turning down money that you deem is beneath you. And Derby go, we'll see you later then. And because a lot, and you look at the reaction, there's tweets and there's the different sides of it where almost saying, boo-hoo, you've got to struggle on an X amount of money. Another one saying, well, let's look at it for how it looks from the outset. Exactly as you say, Johnny, the two that actually got arrested, the two that were in trouble
guilty in a court of law,
in a position where now, because they're not in a court of law to be judged morally, whereas Keogh's been judged morally in the back of a car very, very... I mean, if he plays again, it'll be nothing short of a miracle. And he's the one who's ended up in this position. I think you're absolutely right. I think the sympathy isn't about, oh, poor him. The understanding comes out from the general public of, well, if it happens to one, then it happens to everyone that was deemed to be involved in that.
Yeah, and you stop making cynical financial decisions. The other element to this, given all of the media storm around it, is Derby will just be getting a breather. It'll start to quieten down in the press in 6 weeks or so. It'll be around Christmas. We'll have other distractions. Then bang, 1st of January, enter stage left, Mr. Wayne Rooney. The question is, will that be particularly helpful? We'll be discussing that later in the show. Coming up next, we're talking England, we're talking rugby, and we're talking the World Cup final.
This is Love Sport.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought, let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the mortgage, and the cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer, and Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice, soon as I did.
Macmillan, right there with you. Call now or search Macmillan Money Worries.
As a parent, you always want to protect your kids, so make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles and whooping cough are on the rise and can cause severe illness, but childhood vaccinations can help prevent them. Are your child's up to date? Find out more. Search online for NHS vaccinations.
Don't get caught out by rising energy bills this year. Leading price comparison site A Spokesman Said can help you save money in just minutes. Plus, sign up to A Spokesman Said to get the latest super cheap collective energy deals. These offers are such great value, they aren't even available direct from the energy companies. Savvy customers have saved over £10 million from collective energy deals. Go to aspokesmansaid.com and you could be saving big money on your bills.
With aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
This is Love Sport.
Sweet love, sweet chariot, coming for the...
There's a lot you can say when you're talking about that England performance against the All Blacks. You can talk about the line-out, where we were supposed to be dominated, and Maro Itoje and Courtney Lawes took charge. You can talk about the organisation, you can talk about the discipline, the scrap, but you can also talk about the leadership. And I think a huge element of our brilliance was Owen Farrell, was Eddie Jones as well, of course, the setup to receive that hacker, the smirk from Farrell, the constant communication, the scrappiness of Maro Itoje. And we're going to need all of that on Saturday morning because we go again. It's a World Cup final. It is a crucial game for England. They've got to get themselves up for it all over again. And Owen Farrell is feeling good ahead of that big game.
We need to build up as we had done every other week. And as Eddie said, we're nice and calm and relaxed at the minute. We've done all the preparation in terms of on-field stuff. We'll make sure the mental side of it builds up from now.
And the coach, Eddie Jones, is feeling similarly confident.
I've been so impressed by the preparation of the players throughout the tournament, and particularly this week. There's a steeliness about them, but also a nice relaxed feeling because they know they've done the work, so they can get on with the job.
Just changed his role, mate. We changed his role. So much to smile about with this England team, but something that's been written about in the papers at great length today is the leadership, starting with Farrell and these captains' meetings he's been having in the night before every test match, not just in the World Cup, but beforehand. And this, of course, preceded his reign as captain. They were doing it under Hartley. But Farrell has been doing, reportedly, these incredibly motivating speeches in which he talks. He calls on other leaders, the likes of Curry, the likes of Maro Itoje, Mako Vunipola to get involved. But he also picks on the younger players, the less experienced players, the players you wouldn't expect to lead, and goes, go on, lads, what do you think? It seems like this is an inclusive, combative squad who don't just fight very hard. They actually think very hard and have quite a complex understanding of what it is to motivate and what it takes to win.
And life.
Your microphone's off, Guy. I normally cover for you, but on that occasion, it was just Guy Watts ready to come in swinging with a motivational quote.
He's given it the full Derby one and launched him under the bus.
Full Derby. You are a professional scapegoat. Take 2.
Yeah, right, here I am. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon.
This is where the show actually starts, doesn't it?
We can get cracking. Yeah, funny to have such deep thinking from a man who sounds like Owen Farrell does, isn't it?
Yeah,
Let's be quite honest, with the broadest Wigan accent of all time. I think initially it was a genuine issue for him when he became captain because he was
just scratching there. What?
No, seriously, you could see referees, especially the foreign referees, the French referees, for example, sort of like, sorry? What? Mate,
you are English, right?
I don't get it.
Go again.
And the best news is George Ford's the vice captain. And where did he grow up? Oh, down the road from Owen Farrell in Wigan. So, yeah, not exactly ideal. But, yeah, I think actually that gives us quite a nice sort of symbolism for the journey that Farrell's been on as a captain. I think it was a bit of an awkward beginning. Awkward for 2 reasons. One, because he hadn't done a lot of it before. He hadn't been a captain at Saracens, where Brad Barrett's been the captain for years. And before that, they had other senior pros doing the job as well. Farrell's still only 28 years old, even though he's been playing for England since the age of 21. And also the fact that he had to do it as a sort of co-captain with Dylan Hartley, and often Hartley would be the senior captain to start with, and then he'd go off after 45 minutes or so, and Farrell would take over. So he probably didn't feel fully emboldened, if you like, to kind of take ownership of the team, and Hartley was the senior player, the senior captain, and Hartley was a brilliant servant for England, and it's a shame that his career and international career ended the way it did. But I think really it was Farrell's team for a lot longer than it was officially Farrell's team. And it's interesting reading about how he has grown into the role, the official role that is. And I think it's interesting looking at some of the other men in the papers today who have captained England at past World Cups. Of course, you've got Martin Johnson, you've got Lewis Moody, who's going to join us tomorrow, by the way, Chris Robshaw, Phil Vickery, who joined Love Sport Breakfast this morning, but also Will Carling, perhaps the most famous England captain of them all. And he was brought in earlier this year as leadership consultant by Eddie Jones, and it was slightly laughed at, I think, the idea that you could bring someone in and teach them about leadership. But actually, I think we've really seen the rewards of whatever emphasis it is that's been put on it, because this team is just streets ahead from even where it was 6 months ago, isn't it? I mean, 6 months ago, we couldn't hold on to a 30-point lead against Scotland at home. And last week, we put in that performance against the All Blacks, which, yes, David Prutton, I did successfully manage to avoid the score of until after my game of football.
That was amazing, absolutely.
Were you impressed?
I was very impressed.
More with that or with the England players?
More with how you managed to avoid the result.
Good.
But the kind of gist about the leadership strategy and Will Carling helping Farrell with that. In any other form of business, that wouldn't be laughed at, it wouldn't be poo-pooed or anything like that. So because, yes, Farrell as a player can do X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean that you can then inspire people around you or help people around you to do as well at their game as you possibly can. Captains need to approach it in different ways. Captains need to realise that different players need different buttons pushing. It goes back to either the arm round or the kick at the backside. Some like immense detail. Some like it to be kept very, very simple. Some like to feel a certain way. And that's what it seems like they've managed to create with this. Eddie Jones he talked about the players being relaxed because they've done the work. That was something that Johnny Wilkinson always used to say, wasn't it? Getting onto the pitch, he knew that he'd kicked X amount of balls over the course of a week. So when it came to doing it, yes, it was in front of a crowd, but it was just done by rote. You know what I mean? It'd go again and go again and go again. And I think the level of relaxation, as we said in the run-up to the All Blacks game, was absolutely perfect because, yes, it was huge. Yes, it was the biggest game that they were going to play in. But they approached it in a way that they felt comfortable enough to be able to go from, well, even before minute one, even when it comes to confronting the hack end and thinking, we're going to do this, we're happy with doing this, we're comfortable with doing this, and then we're going to start the game exactly how we did.
100%. And somewhere in the paper today it was quoted, actually here it is, we're going to punish them with good decisions constantly. We're going to play this game at our pace, not how they want to play it. All right, we'll build it up. We'll have a good chat tonight. That was Owen Farrell's final words in the last training session before the All Blacks game. The emphasis all being on England controlling it. And Eddie Jones talks a lot about how the narrative was about the pressure on the All Blacks. England were just there to enjoy it, and that's probably his and his coaching team and Will Carling's greatest achievement in kind of empowering the players to feel relaxed, before these massive games. While they've played with incredible intensity, I think you've got to be comfortable in your own skin and with your own game plan to play that well, to be quite honest. I think if you're wound up and nervous and unsure about how you're going to play, even if you know you've got to be brutal and intense, I don't think you can play that well.
But the flip side of that coin is that if we're honest, it suited England in the lead up to that semi-final for New Zealand to be favourites. Eddie Jones could play off that. We could spin it how we liked. All the pressure was on them. It was chasing them up the street. Now, precisely because we were so good, we are in that position. We are the favourites. We will be expected to dictate terms, to play the way we want to play. And it'll be interesting to see how Farrell, how Jones, how Itoje get the rest of the lads up for that kind of contest.
Yeah, Marrow, who was quoted as well from an old interview he gave in the paper today, I've never heard it said of a team that there are too many leaders. I thought, actually, that's a really nice soundbite. Is that something you'd agree with? Or can you actually have too many chief cooks trying to spoil the broth?
It depends if they're all very similar. If they've all got an opinion and they're all trying to set that opinion at the exact same time, then that's when it starts to get a bit tricky. Somebody at some stage in a team sport has to have that lone voice, which is the final say on what's going on. I'd say what the great thing with Farrell is, and the great thing with the way that he talks about having team meetings, and from the outside looking in, top level sport is like that final few scenes in Any Given Sunday where Pacino comes in, nails a speech, everyone reacts, and then they go and play the game of their lives. I've been in that position where you might have been struggling, you might be looking to get something from a game, and real life can take over, where someone can say the wrong thing and it kills the mood completely. Someone can say something and someone goes, what? That's ridiculous. So to be able to do this, be comfortable in yourself, to be serious, to have a bit of light and shade going into the game, and everyone buying into that. It's important because just as much as negative thoughts can derail, so can the element of, well, he doesn't know what he's on about, I don't get that. Or not being, having your ego in check to think that, yes, I might have something to say, but for the sake of what this team meeting is, for the sake of what this campaign is, I'll just shut up. I'll just go along with what's been told, because at the end of it, the greater good is we could be world champions.
And do you think there's been, I sense there has been, but I haven't been playing any professional sport, I've only been observing from a long way away, is there been a sort of lessening of the emphasis on things like Churchillian speeches and rousing talks and even dishing out rollickings, if you like, in the dressing room? Because, and we were talking about this with Martin yesterday, we'll come on to it maybe as a separate topic later, the whole way that you have to treat players as a coach and as a manager and stuff now differently to how you did in the past. But has there been a lessening of the emphasis on giving this great rhetoric? It's about more now a steady build-up, a team meeting before the game, the night before the game, even the day before the game, and sort of doing it steadily and just making sure that you go out on the pitch rather than maybe pumped up into a frenzy, in a bit of a calmer state, ready to deliver on a game plan that's been very carefully mapped out and trained into you.
Well, I think that's where the element of the word professional has grown in stature within top-level sport, because that element of where you, like you say, you pump someone up, someone's headbutt in the wall of the tunnel, getting ready to go out and absolutely go for it. This is a highly structured, highly thought out, highly revised and detailed game plan. Specifically, so I mean, more so in games where there's a breakdown in rugby, where you can break down the different facets of what a game could fall into. A lot of football is off the cuff. You can look at set pieces, you can look at methods, you can look at structures and formations of a way to play. But sometimes the other side of it is you're just hoping that the team that you've put out is going to have a good game. With this, you're talking about highly ambitious, highly driven athletes. Those days of it being a manager in charge of a load of idiots that have testosterone coming out of their ears, I know they're going to run around, but they're going to do something that I want them to more often than not, hopefully. Eddie Jones runs that team almost corporate-like, almost business-like. Right, lads, this is what I expect of you. This is what you're going to get from it. And any one of those players would be daft not to go, whatever you want us to do, Eddie, we'll go on board. We don't need someone, like you say, standing up, beating his chest. We don't need somebody to stand up and evoke memories of world wars and victories past. You just need to make sure that the players are focused enough to make sure that this next portion of minutes is the most important thing in their lives. After that, it isn't. But for the next hour and a bit, sorry, lads, everything that you've ever done relies on this.
Phil Vickery was a big one for those Churchillian speeches. On Love Sport Breakfast this morning, he was saying how his nickname was Churchill. He said, not the nodding dog because of my speeches, but I wonder if you've got a massive game of rugby, football or anything to go out and play, if getting into that emotional state, and I'll admit, I do get quite emotional listening to him talk about it, or other people talk about what was said to them before. I think it is quite emotional and overpowering, but that's not to say that leaves you in the best state necessarily to go out and deliver on those really important technical, tactical aspects that you've worked so hard on. I think one of the best things Eddie Jones has done is go from a structure at the start maybe of his time in charge where he was almost dictatorial to a stage now where you've got not one leader in Farrell, you've got a few Itoje, Vunipolas, possibly players like Mark Wilson as well, stepping forward, George Ford, and just sort of being their leaders themselves and not relying on the coach.
Do we then applaud Eddie Jones even more for that? Coming into the situation going, do you know what? You lot need to shut up and listen to me for a little bit. And then when you've earned my trust, then when you know what I'm about, I can bring you out your shells.
He had a plan all along, it seems. And he always talks about the World Cup as being all that really mattered. And he's quite right. That's all we're ever going to judge him on. And I'll take you back just quickly to 2003, 80 minutes into the World Cup final. The scores are locked at 14-all. England were minutes away from winning the World Cup when Australia got a last-gasp penalty. Of course, we went on to win. We know what happened. 2 more penalty, or a penalty and a drop goal from Johnny Wilkinson. Clive Woodward was coming over to the players gathered on the pitch to give the team talk, to tell them what to do. And Martin Johnson said, stay away, we've got this. And sure enough, we went on to win it. And he had created an atmosphere and a culture, Sir Clive Woodward, where that was able to happen.
And Eddie Jones talks about that a lot. He talks about working towards a state where he has made himself defunct, where the players can go, no, you're right, Eddie, you are all right. And that point of being calm rather than being really pumped up is a good one. It's like your analogy of headbutting the wall. If you go out against the All Blacks and you really want to smash somebody and you go in with a shoulder and you get a yellow card, we lose that game. It is about sticking to it. And I think there's a point with these England players, the way that leadership is very, very cerebral. They were talking in the Times today about Owen Farrell studying management at university and that being part of his approach. Maro Itoje going and talking to leaders in the military, in business, in politics to learn about how leadership works. These are clearly guys thinking carefully as well as training hard, and it certainly seems to be working on the pitch. We're going to have lots more on the Rugby World Cup throughout the show, building up, of course, to Saturday morning. Coming up, we're talking to Luke Prosser, Colchester United captain. They've only gone and drawn a big, big side in the League Cup. Don't go anywhere.
Love sport.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're right.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in.
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
Are you paying way over the odds for your car insurance? The spiralling costs put people off driving, full stop. But you're a careful driver, and realistically, you'll only need an insurance payout if some halfwit cuts you off on the M1. So you shouldn't be forced to pay massive car insurance premiums. And you don't have to. Go to price comparison site aspokesmansaid.com today and find out the best value car insurance deals on the market. Don't pay the price for not shopping around.
Spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Brilliant, I've finally quit.
I can keep up with my kids now.
I feel like I've got my life back.
It's an amazing feeling when you stop smoking. Experience it for yourself with help from Smoke Free. Our range of free support can help you quit for good. From our app to emails, face-to-face and online communities. Search Smoke Free, because there's only one you.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
This is Love Sport.
Nothing, and I mean nothing, beats a cup run, particularly when you are not a team who always goes all the way in these big competitions. A fairy tale result or a fairy tale 2 results can do very, very nicely. League 2, Colchester United not happy just with knocking Tottenham out. They've now made it all the way to the quarter-final, where they have drawn none other than the mighty Manchester United. We're drawn against and joined on the line by Luke Prosser, Colchester United captain. Good afternoon, Luke. Thanks for joining us. Are you excited by this draw?
I am, yeah. I think we all are. I think we were sitting there this morning, and as soon as, no disrespect to Oxford, as soon as Oxford got drawn against Manchester City, it was sort of a free hit then to who we'd be drawn against. But yeah, United away, sort of a dream draw. There's quite a few of the lads in the dressing room that also support Manchester United. So now there's a lot of happy faces this morning at the training ground.
It's a bit of a different one this for you lot, Luke, isn't it? Because obviously you went into the Spurs game as favourites, given how bad they were. Now, Man United...
I'm a Spurs fan, you can't be saying that.
So, well, I mean, sitting across the Arsenal fan, he routinely batters Spurs over the course of...
I routinely batter Arsenal as well.
But, I mean, in the sense of going into a game such as this, given how United, yes, we've seen them in the last couple of games, have a little bit of an upswing, there's still elements of that team where you feel if you're having a good day, if 9 or 10 of your players are going for 8 or 9 out of 10 on that particular game, then you've got to fancy yourselves, haven't you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think they had Rochdale a few rounds ago, didn't they? And they sort of took them to penalties. So there's always that hope. We done that against Crystal Palace and Spurs. We dug in, we defended really, really well, and managed to beat them on penalties. So, no, obviously seeing Rochdale do what they've done, there's always hope. I think we've gained that now from beating, obviously, 2 Premier League teams, that obviously anything can happen. It goes straight to penalties. There's no extra time. So, obviously... I think you tend to take every 15 minutes at a time in games like that. Obviously, get through as long as you can, 0-0, and then obviously anything can happen. So.
That's a fantastic point. That's what I was going to ask about. Is it that very element of staying in the game for as long as possible? Because, like you say, you leave yourselves wide open. If you go for it early on, you could be on the back of something a little bit uncomfortable. But from what you said there, 15 minutes in, just a quick check of the lads. Everyone all right? Yeah. We're getting on with the game. Get to half an hour. Get to half time and manage it that way.
Yeah, most definitely. I think Palace, we started really well against Palace. Had a few chances, but we actually got the ball down. Was able to play. Spurs was different kettle of fish. We tried to play, couldn't play. They just pressed the life out of us. So then we sort of knew we were just going to have to sit in. And I think, obviously, we was frustrated come half time because we hadn't played at all. We hadn't put 2 passes together. But then, obviously, the manager reassures you, boys, it's 0-0. And then you start to get a bit more belief. You think, yeah, you know what, it is 0-0. So 45 minutes left and then penalties. And as the longer the game goes on, you get more and more belief because you're holding out a Premier League team. And, like you say, I think against Spurs towards the end of the game, we looked like we was going to score probably more than them. So it's another match and the game plan is going to be pretty much the same, if I'm honest. But, yeah, obviously anything can happen. And for us to get to the quarterfinals is huge for the club, especially as players. I've never been involved in something as big as this. So to lead the boys out at Old Trafford away, sort of a dream come true, so to speak. So, no, it should be. It's just a good achievement for everyone. So sort of a free hit, isn't it? Obviously, you never know what can happen on the night. So yeah, just sort of taking it like that, really.
Luke, take me back to the Spurs game. Take me back to the penalty shootout, and take me back to Giovanni Brown's attempt at the Panenka. I'm sure he's a lovely boy. I know he's a good footballer. It's the worst penalty I've ever seen. It is
do you know what,
bad.
though? At the time, I didn't realise how bad it was. I knew what he'd tried. It wasn't until I got home, and that was all over the internet. That was what they were saying, the worst Panenka ever. And that's when I watched it back and actually thought, God, that was bad.
The best thing about it, Luke, is that Gazzaniga, the Spurs keeper, has time to swear at him before he's even saved it. So in the dressing room afterwards... How did Giovanni get on?
To be fair, he didn't really get much stick that day. He got more stick, obviously, the following day when we was all in for a cool-down. Obviously, I think everyone then had witnessed it on telly or whatnot. So, during the time, I think had we have gone out through something like that, I don't think he'd have made that changing room. But, listen, he tried it, it didn't work. But fortunately for us and everyone else, obviously, we still managed to go through. So.
What was the manager?
Didn't get as much stick.
What was the manager's reaction to it, Luke?
A lot of the people weren't happy. I did pull him, to be fair, and said that a game in that magnitude, you can't be doing things like that. There's a lot on the line, obviously, especially considering how far we've gone now. Listen, you don't want to be going out to something like that. So, I don't think he'd try again, to be honest.
and Luke, mixed feelings for you, presumably. You started your career in the Spurs youth setup. You say you're a Spurs fan. So you're there going, I'm captain of Colchester. We've beaten the Premier League big boys. Spurs have been knocked out. How did you feel?
No. I had a few mates, obviously, giving me a bit of stick. Obviously, really pleased for me. But at the same time, giving me a bit... Because obviously, as a Spurs fan, you think that's the sort of competition they might go on and get a bit of silverware. So... to be the one to stop that, one of them things, I suppose. But yeah, no, obviously all my family were Colchester fans that night, that's for sure.
So in the interim, Luke, obviously league games have got to be taken care of as well. Is it going to be tough to keep everyone's minds on what's in front of them? The next game's coming up.
I don't think so. We managed to do that, obviously, in previous rounds when we knew we had Palace, we knew we had Spurs. We still went on and was doing well in the league. So it's 6 weeks away, so there's a lot of football to be played before that game. So boys that are in the team now, I think we've got to keep our shirts for that in 6 weeks' time. So, yeah, obviously, it'll probably give everyone a bit more chomping for the shirt kind of thing. So, no, hopefully it all pans out well. And obviously everyone will be 100% raring to go, obviously, come the 16th or 17th, whenever the game is. So,
what about the aims for the rest of the season with regard to where you are in the league?
We need to pick up. We've not done bad as of late, but we've had a few draws where we need to turn them into wins. We've got a hard game. We travel to Mansfield tomorrow, and they've picked up as of late. Got a really good, strong team. So no, we do need to kick on now in the league. We haven't done bad, but obviously we haven't accumulated as many points for how well we've been doing. So obviously cup form's been very good. It hasn't been good since I've been here, to be honest. We've gone out first round, I think, of every competition I've been in. So obviously that's a bit different now. We've got a lot more games. We've played a lot more football. But yeah, hopefully, obviously, we can take Tuesday night's performance. I know it's Crawley, but Spurs' performance, them sort of performances, we take that into the league. Obviously, hopefully, we'll climb the table pretty quickly.
Well, you're not far off those playoff places, Luke. Good luck for the rest of the season. Good luck in the League Cup as well. And great to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
All the best, Luke.
Thank you. Luke Prosser there, Colchester United captain. Now, Colchester United, David Prutton, is a club very close to your heart.
It was a little port of call on my meandering journey to the middle.
Talk about it like an ex-girlfriend.
It was. I remember I was out of favourite Leeds and I was watching a game. It was a midweek game, and I bumped into Eddie Boothroyd, who was intaking the game, and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." We had a quick chat about why I wasn't playing. I said, "It's obviously because this manager doesn't think I'm very good." And he said, "All right, you fit there?" I said, "Yeah, as fit as you can be without playing football matches." A couple of days later, it kind of gained a bit of momentum, and I ended up in the Holiday Inn just off the A12.
Glamour.
This is the glamorous side of football, and so stayed there for it must have been January time, up to the end of the season, which was. I made some good buddies down there. It was slightly different. You kind of go to the stadium in the morning, get changed, you'd all get on the team bus, you'd drive across town, you'd go to the garrison, you'd go and do your bit of training, you'd come back, and it was just a bit different, having had the luxury, if you like, of being at Leeds United and their glorious training complex, to kind of being brought back to what the reality of football is for 75-80% of professional footballers that actually have the ability and the privilege of making it, but not at the very glamorous end. But it was certainly an experience, I'll tell you that.
So you initially went there on loan,
yes,
and that loan only lasted for one game. Because
I was that good.
Well, you joke, but you came off the bench against
MK
Dons. You scored a screamer, and they then he's there like, did I score a belter?
Genuinely forgot that.
Oh yeah,
genuinely forgot that. It was because the pitch at that time was an absolute disgrace. It was worse than awful. So it sat up nicely, and it could have gone over the stand, but for some reason,
but the technique was perfect. The knee was over.
Yeah, that was the 10,000-hour rule, all that type of stuff had brought to the fore. And I remember doing that, and then I remember, because I was going to take part in that again, then drive back north, because obviously North Yorkshire to Colchester is, if you've never done it, it's a hell of a long way. So then Eddie Boothroyd pulled me and said, just a bit of fitness. I want you to play in a under-20s game tomorrow. And you know what, I was like, yeah. Oh, he's been serious. Still need to make a good impression here. Do you mind if I don't and I go home and get some more stuff? Because I basically got my wash bag and that's about it. But it was we were part of because it jogged my memory of how bad that pitch was. We played against Southend, which became infamously known as the Divot Derby, when Adam Barrett for Southend was trying to clear the ball off the line, but feet got stuck in the mud.
World class. Love that.
And I mean, if nothing screams Division 3 football, then I don't know what does. And it was we had a good crack at it. We just missed out on the playoffs. Eddie was really good. It was the time of my career when, I think I mentioned before, when Danny Bath was there and he scored the best own goal I've ever seen against Millwall. Little touches from Eddie. I really enjoy playing for him and the kind of person that he was. Where the family sat was right next to the away end. Obviously, Millwall are quite boisterous.
Lively.
Yeah, and there was some choice language, and every kind of wives, girlfriends, etc. got a bunch of flowers after sorry that you had to go through that. Not the football, because obviously that was terrible. But sorry you had
to see that pitch.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry you had to go through that. But this is just part of the kind of familial feel that we've got. And I was just saying before we came on, so I'd pitched up. I don't know if anyone was remotely bothered about that. Frank Cadrew pitched up in this V8 Mustang. He'd come tearing down. I think he would he have been a Burrow at the time? Came down. Funtime Frankie, we call him, because lovely fella, but just completely crackers. And you got the sense of, as he came in, got changed for training, it was like, where's the training going? Oh, we've got to get on a bus now, Frank. What do you mean we've got to get on a bus? A coach across town to go to where the garrison is. And you could just see him scratching his head thinking, this is going to be interesting. But he was good. It was a really good bunch of lads,
And I believe you had an unorthodox run-in with the A12.
I did.
That is the road for anyone listening.
Which is prone to huge levels of traffic. It was in a game towards the end of the season. We'd meandered to wherever we'd meandered to. I'd not been sent off for a while, so I thought it's about time I've got my red card count back up. And there was 2 yellow cards where there's one would have obviously been for a missed time challenge earlier on in the game. The second one, as the ball was bouncing out of play, the split second where the referee blew the whistle. I say split second. It was about 3 or 4 seconds after he'd blown, and I incomprehensibly kicked the ball off the pitch to waste a bit of time, and it went between 2 of the stands, which is directly next to the A12, and went sailing out onto that dual carriageway. And there's me there trying to mitigate to all the obviously, lad, you all the same thing I did. And Paul Reed, the captain at the time, was like, "You're an idiot." I said, "What do you mean?" He went, "You quite obviously knew what you were doing. It wasn't even well disguised." I said, "Reedy, what are you talking about?" Actually, it was a split second thing, mate. It was about 5 seconds, which is a long time in footballing terms.
It is indeed. Well, it's Posh Boys on Drive. That's me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, and of course David Prutton, the inverse Gary Lineker. We're with you until 7.
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
Home insurance is vital. You don't want to end up paying through the nose when something goes wrong. But are you being charged way too much for your home cover? Are your insurance premiums simply too much to bear? It doesn't have to be that way. A spokesmansaid.com is a price comparison website that trawls the internet to find the best deal for you. Don't pay the price for not shopping around. Visit a spokesmansaid.com and start saving today.
A spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
As a busy mum, you're juggling loads of things. And when your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics to help them get better. For things like sore throats, coughs and colds, you can get advice from your local pharmacy. And you don't need an appointment. To find your nearest pharmacy, search NHS Choices.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Love Sport.
Marcus has that strike in him. I've seen him in training so many times, and it's got to be hitting the target soon, you think, because he's had a few efforts and finally it goes in.
Manchester United manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there talking about Rashford's frankly unbelievable winner against Chelsea last night in the League Cup. Shades of Cristiano Ronaldo about it. Shades of Ronaldo versus Portsmouth, no less. ball free kick, strikes it nicely on the valve. It kind of dips and swerves without the ball rotating. It is, as the old cliche goes, completely unsavable. I could kick 10,000 footballs, genuinely, and I would never be able to do that. It was on the eve of his 22nd birthday. Now, I think we forget how young Marcus Rashford is, because when he broke through, he was still so young. He, of course, has got to 50 United goals quicker than Ronaldo did. Are we actually still dealing with a genuinely prodigious talent here?
I don't think it's helped with how United have been over the course of that time. The Ronaldo comparison, he played in one of the best teams that Alex Ferguson put together, which was serial trophy winners. With Marcus, he came in circumstances where the very best young players sometimes find themselves. That period in a club where injuries, suspensions, etc., suddenly, boom, someone needs to come in, step up. I think he did exactly that. I think with any young player, we go to town on them very, very early, don't we? Yes, he's going to be this, he's got to be that. And a young player coming through United has seen the benchmark that's been set by generations past, i.e. dominating European football and domestic football. So I think the talent that he shows, the free kick that he took last night, that's no fluke, is it? We've seen the quality of the play before. We've seen the big game mentality. That penalty against PSG in the very dying seconds, where that felt that team had come of age. Obviously, it was a bit of a false dawn, but he's got the mentality to play for a club at that level and score those types of goals. And I think perhaps where that the general malaise that we've seen at United and the general, not ill will, but the cynicism that United have been judged on over the course of Ollie being in charge, I think perhaps has been to his detriment, to be honest, because of if you took him out and looked at him and what he does alone as a football player, he's a fantastic football player. And there's just been that debate also about where you're going to get the absolute best from him, because Mourinho had his take on where he should be, Ollie's got his take on where he should be. But I think to have an appraisal of him at 22 years old from a career trajectory point of view, let's be honest, he's not doing too bad at all, is he?
He's really not, although he does seem to struggle with the denominations of different competitions. Asked about the result yesterday, the interviewer said, Marcus, it's your birthday tomorrow. How good is it to celebrate with a result like that? And Rashford goes, yeah, it's, always great to get the 3 points. It's the League Cup, Marcus. There are no points available. Lord above.
I was reading something that the Longstaff brothers were talking about post-match interviews. And it's always very intriguing, because having seen the other side of it now, I always enjoyed chatting to people after games and before games. Basically, I just enjoyed chatting to someone that would listen, chasing report. Now, I've got something really mind-blowing to say, but when we look at it now, because we watch footballers and class them as entertainers when they do score goals such as that, and when they do have the ability to be able to make us feel something that no other experience as a human being can, we then suddenly want them to come off the pitch. And also, can you be engaging, charismatic, funny, self-deprecating and humble all at the same time, please?
And this is confident enough.
And this is 20 seconds after you've stopped running around and the microphone's shoved under your nose. And I think when we used to sit with David Beckham, we used to sit with Wayne Rooney. Well, why can't Wayne Rooney tell us exactly how he's just done that? Because in a footballing sense, he's a genius. So he can't explain what he's done. He just instinctively knows what to do when the situation is presented. Marcus Rashford would have practiced that goal, that free kick. I'm not saying that every single one that he hit would have been as good as that in training, but the repetition breeds the ability to be able to do it. And that instant kind of post-match, the off switch of coming away from performance into the on switch of just say the factory settings of what this is. Because let's be honest, in theory, it's very few and far between the times where a player comes off the pitch and says something genuinely mind-blowing. And that's not to their detriment. I'm just saying, because they've done something fantastic for an hour and a half. They are pretty knackered. Then we go, what do you think about that? And then we say, and he says about 3 points. It's funny. It's a light-hearted way of poking fun at someone. But it does bring into broader debate about what we expect post-match, I think.
And I think factory settings is a very interesting phrase to use, because there's got to be an element of autopilot here.
Absolutely.
Where you say 3 points so much to mean a win. When you're talking about a win, you just say 3 points. I have every sympathy for Marcus Rashford. In terms of the free kick itself, Jack Grealish, who I suspect may not himself be the sharpest tool in the box, has said, I think this is the best free kick I've ever seen. Jack, I watched a 5-minute compilation this morning of free kicks, all of which were better than that one. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
No.
It was, to be fair, a world-class striker for football.
Mm-hmm.
But in the scale of the Ronaldos, the Roberto Carloses, the Juninhos, the David Beckhams, how high up there is it?
It's the most recent one, so therefore it gets hurtled into the front of your brain, and you start scrambling and thinking, well, where do we look at where it lies in the pantheon of great free kicks? Because and it depends how you break this down. Do you look at it as solely the technique and the execution? Do you look at it in the broadest context of what the game was? Beckham against Greece, a time and a place to become a national hero. You've got to really put it into. I mean, Paul Gascoigne in the cup final
against Arsenal.
That was a truly wonder. I mean, obviously Seaman went with the wrong hand, and we all know that. But in the sense of great free kicks at the right space and time, technically it was pretty nigh on perfect, because what you're trying to do, you mentioned Ronaldo's, because he really was the first exponent of that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Suddenly,
I don't know how he worked it out.
Because I mean, and this is trying to work out how to kick a ball like that. Almost reimagines how you're taught to kick a ball when you're younger.
But I also don't see how they do it, because I understand, in practical terms, I understand what you do. You place the ball so that you can strike it on the valve, and then you kind of strike across it flat in a way that means you make contact with the valve, which sets the ball off so it will sway in the air but not rotate. That is how you do it. Could I do it in 100,000 tries? Not a clue. Not a prayer. It's an incredible thing to be able to do.
And it's extremely tricky. Having been in a position where there was, I remember going to Peterborough and speaking to, and this is obviously a different level of football, speaking to Marcus Maddison, who's part of a front three there, which, I mean, free scoring, he's assist-wise, he's up there with the very best across the Football League. And he, bless him, he was trying to explain it to me. He probably had no idea that I may have played football in the past at all. So I was there to interview him. He said, well, no, you put the ball down like this.
Did he mansplain it?
He mansplained it to the nth degree. But I just...
You put your boots on.
And then you put... So you get one lace either side. You follow the rabbit round the tree. And then we started, and then he went, and then in the end it was a case of just do it like this. And my brain wouldn't compute the fact that, so I need to kick it in a way that feels like that will break my ankle. So I always kept bottling it at the last minute and kicking it as you were brought up and taught to do from day dot. So it's an extraordinary way of kicking a football. It defies physics in the sense that you can kick a ball, and yes, it's moving in the air, but the ball itself isn't actually moving. That is mind-blowing to me.
Absolutely staggering. More on Manchester United, more on Chelsea as well throughout the show.
This is Love Sport.
Hi, I'm Barry. I'm a retired school bursar from Chingford. I thought I was paying too much for my energy and went onto a spokesmansaid.com and found that I could reduce my costs overall by £568 per annum, and I'm very grateful for that help.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
As a parent, you always want to protect your kids, so make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles and whooping cough are on the rise and can cause severe illness, but childhood vaccinations can help prevent them. Are your child up to date? Find out more. Search online for NHS vaccinations.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
I love my brother. We do fun things like playing together. I like having hugs with Freddie. Freddie gives the best hugs. Freddie used to be very poorly, and the doctor said he might need a new liver. Then one day, a very nice person gave their liver to Freddie. It was amazing. We were so happy. Now he's around to give me more hugs than ever.
Tell your family you want to save lives. To find out more, visit organdonation.nhs.uk.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Well, it's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive, where Love Sport's David Prutton has only just seen fit to tell me he's brought lemon yum-yums in. I'm very excited. But that is low down on the list of delights we've got coming up for you. We're going to be talking to a top sports psychologist to find out how England are going to be preparing for this World Cup final. You've geared yourselves up for the All Blacks. How do you do it all over again? And we're talking to a consultant neurosurgeon and spinal surgeon after the tragic news that triple Olympic rowing champion Pete Reed is paralysed from the chest down after suffering a spinal stroke. We're talking Chelsea, we're talking United, but first, news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 4, ITV is being accused of a corporate failure of responsibility towards participants on the Jeremy Kyle show. Experts say a video given to MPs by a whistleblower shows humiliation and provocation of guests have become normalised. The broadcaster says the safety of everyone it works with is priority. The US House of Representatives has voted to proceed with the next stage of the impeachment investigation of Donald Trump. The president's accused of putting pressure on Ukraine to examine his political rival Joe Biden, which he denies. Democrats will now be able to control the inquiry. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke before the votes.
It's about the truth and it's about the Constitution. We're working hard to defend our democracy, because if we don't have a system of checks and balances, we might as well all just elect a president and go home, because it will be that unitary form of government.
The Shadow Chancellor's ruling out a post-election deal with any other party. John McDonnell was speaking after Jeremy Corbyn kicked off Labour's campaign.
We will win a majority government, full stop.
If you don't, you'd run a minority
government. We would run a minority government, we'd implement the policies, and we'd expect the other parties to support them. If they didn't, well, we'll go back to the people.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's accused the Labour leader of dithering and refusing to allow Brexit to happen. The Lib Dems insist they are the main party supporting staying in the EU. Labour MP Keith Vaz has been suspended from the House of Commons for 6 months. MPs have backed a report which suggested the punishment after he expressed willingness to purchase cocaine for male prostitutes. No charges will be brought against the driver or operator of a tram which crashed in 2016, killing 7 people. 51 others were injured when it derailed in southeast London, coming off the tracks at almost 4 times the speed limit. And Kylie Jenner's filed for a restraining order after claiming a man scaled her gate and aggressively knocked on the door. The reality TV star says she'd never met him. That's the latest. I'm Annie Green.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good afternoon. It's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. That's me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, and the former Colchester United screamer-scoring midfielder David Prutton, who also, of course, played for a vast range of Football League and Premier League clubs. Your top stories this afternoon. Eddie Jones has picked an unchanged 15 for the first time in 3.5 years. That's as England prepare for Saturday's Rugby World Cup final against South Africa. Richard Keogh's wife has described the defender as a professional scapegoat after Derby County sacked him for gross misconduct, despite Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett remaining at the club. And Liverpool are embroiled in a spying storm. The FA are demanding an explanation after Liverpool employees were accused of accessing City's Scout 7 system. Manchester City, of course, all getting a little bit lively there. And talking of lively, the streets of London, the streets of the nation will uncharacteristically be very, very lively at about 8:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. I normally, David, would not roll out of bed at that hour on a weekend. I'm willing to confess that.
Time of the day.
But on this occasion, I think I will make the effort for a World Cup final. I think that's probably worth it.
You're not going to do something else for a little bit, record it, then come back to it later on?
Well, I was thinking I could go and play a full 90 minutes of 11-a-side football, stick my phone on airplane mode, and then put it inside a bag as if that makes a difference. Oh, those well-known lead-lined bags. And then just watch it on record.
You're having a pop at me, aren't you?
Well, obviously.
No.
I'm just surprised. I also, earlier, I never said I was on airplane mode. It was either airplane mode or the bag, so I just put it in the bag. And
Was it like a seam-sealed bag?
Does your mobile phone shout the rugby score at you? It didn't need to be in some special... No, but it didn't need to be in a special...
It doesn't shout at me like you do.
Reel him in, David. Reel him in. I have to say...
worked perfectly. We won our game. I scored as well. And
Did you?
I did,
Hang on, but you always give it large that you're the manager, you're not a player, and you're not very good. And yet here you are scoring goals.
It's the Vinny company.
I'm just humble.
I've never scored a goal.
I've got 2 and 2 actually, and only one of the 2 was a complete slice.
I actually texted guy and said something along the lines of "It's coming home."
It's coming home.
So I'm trying to.
Hang on, what time did you do
it?
I
was trying to work out the time. It wasn't too long after the game.
It would have been too early, but thankfully I didn't check it because I didn't check my phone.
But
until...
what if something genuinely? Not that I'd ring you if something genuinely was up, but if
David Prutton has broken his leg, guy, come and get
if something genuinely bad had happened, you said sorry, I've had to blank you all because I don't want to see the rugby score.
Well, I told those nearest and dearest to me, which is a list of about
Your
2
next
people,
of kin.
exactly, that I was going to be off grid, and equally, if something had happened to me, I wouldn't have been able to tell them. So everyone would have lost out.
I think also beyond just the next of kin example, you're living dangerously by just putting it inside the bag, because what happens if you forget and you just open your phone to check the time and you've got 80 texts from your radio co-host saying it's coming home?
Well, obviously that would have been frustrating. I would have also been lobbying our boss to have you fired immediately. And also
Probably
I think
wouldn't take much lobbying.
And also
halfway through the sentence, yeah, of course. You don't know what it's for.
And also I told everyone, including you, Johnny, you very well knew that I was trying to avoid the score. And
Johnny actually told me to text you.
I bet he did. That wouldn't surprise me too. I'd done everything I could. I turned off my breaking news alerts because I knew, which is how one of my friends was rumbled on this one. He got a BBC News or whatever it was. Breaking news: England reached the World Cup final. Unlucky, pal. You could have thought ahead.
Came off Tinder, came off Bumble, all of them.
Just in case a random woman was like, "Guy, are you watching the rugby?"
Well, she might have been trying to, I don't know, impress me with
fancy a scrum.
Guy Watts likes long walks on the beach, romantic films, and keeping the rugby score a secret.
Phones in bags.
Phones in bags.
I think we've got carried away with the whole bag bit, haven't we? I've got like a mental image of a tiny phone bag, sealed.
I was actually, joking aside, I was tempted to find out where his game was and just go and shout it at him through a megaphone, I think. Because Guy is not one of these people who, because he loves the rugby so much, he wouldn't find that funny. He really wouldn't find it funny. And a week later, he wouldn't find it funny. Not that he wouldn't find things funny normally, but just with the rugby, it is sacred, and you could really, really wind him up.
He would be sat there fuming in his roll neck.
We would.
Getting hotter and hotter.
We've done it again, by the way. This isn't the first time that we've both managed to wear a roll neck when David Prutton has failed.
Twinning is winning.
Well, I am a twin. So there we go.
There you go.
An actual twin. And of course, England will be hoping to make it twin wins on Saturday, moving on to a Rugby World Cup final. But of course, they're being challenged by some people who believe they have already had their final, that gearing up for the All Blacks was the challenge. The question now is how you get yourself up for another big game. We're joined on the line by Professor Andy Lane, who's a sports psychologist. Good afternoon, Professor Lane. How are England going to handle this?
Good afternoon. I think they have no trouble in many senses because it is such a big game. It's going to be hard to keep calm in many senses and sort of get yourself in the best mindset. I don't think there's any problem about getting psyched up. All the noises that are coming out from the camp are really positive in terms of they're not looking like they're overwhelmed, that they're celebrating the fantastic New Zealand win. So the message that is always about this final, this Saturday, and they knew what they had to do against New Zealand. And fortunately, how South Africa have come out and been really aggressive in how they've come back to England. They've sort of this reality that this is a really tough physical side. Unless we match that physicality, we're not going to get through. And that's probably the best way to prepare someone, because if they're ever sitting on their laurels, what South Africa have done is say, no, you really do need to be on your A game for this, because we are really coming at you. And I think that's the perfect thing to do because they've been successful. They can sort of relax a little bit in that, and then start getting their mind in what's necessary for the final.
Professor, from the point of view of the lead up to the game, is it hard to? You've got to make sure that they don't expend too much nervous energy. Surely, as you say, I mean, and is that when it becomes the mental and emotional side of the build-up? We've heard Eddie Jones talk about, yes, they're prepared, yes, they've done the training, yes, they've boxed off everything tactically, but now really it's the mental and emotional approach to the game that they need to keep in check, don't they?
I mean, absolutely. What we know is that fatigue has got sort of two big components. One is the physical, so if you don't sleep for a few days, you'll feel really exhausted. And the other is the mental, is that you give up and you can't be bothered. And what was going to happen is the potential is to be so psyched up for so long that they've played the game every day for every minute for a week, and they'll be exhausted. So they need to be able to switch off and relax according to do that. And I mean, it's why but one way of doing that is to prepare very carefully for the game, so you know your role, so you know how to train for that role, so that once training's finished, you can feel that you really are prepared for what you need to do exactly for that task. And so you don't think you have to do more training to be able to get better, but you are ready, and you are ready to reenact what you've just done in training and you've done in all the previous games. You feel calm about that. And the quite nice part about a tournament is that you've got used to peaking, relaxing. There's been a series of games where you're in around the same group, it's in a hotel environment, and you've got used to that, and that's really helpful because the tendency or the temptation to do something different won't be there, and they'll have that routine set, and they just need to go through that again, and then they should be good for the final.
We've heard a lot about leadership in the build-up to this game, not just from Eddie Jones, but from Owen Farrell and Maro Itoje as well. How important is it psychologically to be motivated by your own teammates?
Oh, it's massive. And I've seen that some of the comments from Will Carling and some of the other players from the great teams in 2003. And England have got lots of leaders on the pitch, and what that says is that they've got a common goal. They really passionately want to win. That is infectious, inspiring. And when you're with someone who really wants it, you catch some of that positivity. That's magnificent. So you've got people who utterly want to win, and within that, you've got people who can be really calm and within that context. So that passion, desire to win, is a mix-up of different styles. So you've got a whole team of people like that. So it allows you as a player to gravitate to someone who's similar to you in mindset. So if you want someone who really psychs themselves up and demonstrates that, you've got a role model to do so. If you want someone who's calm, you've got a role model to do so. So they role model the characteristics of winning, and that infects the whole team, which makes it really easy to manage because you don't need to worry about one person then having that negative effect across the whole team. Someone you can have one very negative player can really destroy group morale. What we seem to have is very, very positive players who have a very clear goal in terms of mindset and preparation and performance.
And for South Africa, how are they going to be preparing? Because they will be looking at an England team who have beaten the perennial champions, who did so in authoritative style. How can they get themselves into a state of mind where they genuinely believe they can beat us?
I don't think that they have a very good game around that. They will look back across the last year. It's 2-2. The last 4 times 2-2. They know that they can beat. They know that they can beat England. They also have beaten New Zealand and Australia, so they won't be bothered by that. They are used to mixing it with the best all of the time, and so they won't be fazed. They beat Japan in Japan. They beat Wales. They are really tough. They want it to be a tough game. They've prepared for it to be a tough game, and they're going to push it as much as possible. This is a magnificent chance for them because it plays to some of their strengths. It's going to be a tough game, and we have a chance of grinding this out. Really hard to play against. Closing down a lot of the characteristics we got from England. They've been demonstrating very well as well. South Africa, and it's one game. One game. They're big and strong. They can get themselves up for one game. And they see what a fantastic opportunity.
In your professional psychological opinion, who's going to win the World Cup?
Of course, England are.
Is that head or heart?
Well, it's both. But England have got it's such an opportunity, and they play so well, and they've got some of the key things which make me think England are going to win is that it's going to be very tight, and we've got such good kickers. We don't miss much, and that will get points on. And what the others, they'll get their penalties, they'll get their opportunities, and I think they'll take them. And I think South Africa, at 7 points back, are going to really find it a massive struggle to push through to get tries, because they haven't really been in that position. So England have got to play with an intensity. From the intensity, they'll get opportunities, and I think they will be able to take those opportunities. The only thing that might flip that is the bad luck try type thing, which England gave New Zealand, and that would give South Africa a chance of winning. But that could go both ways. Bad luck goes both ways, so you can't really predict that. But my view is that England play with a high intensity. They'll get opportunities for kicking, and they've got the best people to kick them.
They have indeed. Professor Lane, great to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Professor Andy Lane there, who is a sports psychologist who is fully aware just how good we are, just how mentally strong we are, and of the fact that we are going to win the World Cup final.
11:09 was when David Prutton texted me last week, and that was around about half an hour after the final whistle.
You could have ruined it.
That would have ruined your whole day, wouldn't it?
My day. My year. How many times have England beaten New Zealand in a World Cup?
I was on tenterhooks watching it, and I wanted to spread a bit of the joy and the love, but I didn't realise you were otherwise engaged. But well done, though, for avoiding it.
And then I texted you, 4 hours later, by which time the moment had long since passed.
Completely gone.
Then obviously you didn't reply to me. Thanks for that.
No, I was in a fountain in Trafalgar Square, screaming it's coming home to Extinction Rebellion, who were just ignoring me.
Oh, you and Johnny Burrow, was it?
I was on his shoulders. I was 19 foot tall.
And we were on a
Higher than
tube.
Nelson.
we were just dancing along a tube at the time, obviously not advised.
Where's everyone watching this weekend? Pub, home?
I think
Can you do it in a pub at 9 a.m? You can't really.
I can. I did it in a pub at 9 a.m. for the semi-final, but do I want to do it for the final? I feel like it almost might be too pressured. I kind of want to sit alone in a dark room.
If we lose, you'd want to be on your own.
Yeah.
They're young kids. Are you going to be allowed to nip down the pub?
I'll be down here working, so I'll be able to find somewhere to watch it. Probably on a smartphone under Waterloo Bridge.
Andy Good, the former England fly half, joined. That was a really weird image.
That was a really grim idea.
I was going to play something for Andy Good. I think the moment might have passed. Andy Good said he loves it when England come together, do well in a team sport. He joined Love Sport Breakfast this morning. This is what he had to say.
The atmosphere is going to be huge. The whole nation is behind the boys. And what I love about being English is whatever the sport, whatever the world tournament, we get behind it. Whether it be the ladies' football back in the summer, the cricket as well. Now, I've got people coming up to me that have got no clue about rugby. Week in, week out, they're massive England fans now, and they know everything there is to know about the game.
He has captured the nation's imagination, hasn't he? And just think of David Prutton under a bridge in Waterloo.
Well, I was about to say, Guy, thank you for playing that lovely clip, because it gave me time to just sternly discipline David moving forward what is and isn't acceptable on the high standards of Posh Boys on Drive. Lots is still to come, no bridges involved, so stay with us right up till 7.
This is Love Sport.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. you could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Brilliant, I've finally quit.
I can keep up with my kids now. I feel like I've got my life back.
It's an amazing feeling when you stop smoking. Experience it for yourself with help from Smoke Free. Our range of free support can help you quit for good. From our app to emails, face-to-face and online communities. Search Smoke Free, because there's only one you.
If you're driving on a motorway and you see a red X sign overhead, you need to change lanes safely. Driving in a red X lane is an offence. Red X's are there for a reason, to protect you and others from danger. The lane may be blocked by a broken down vehicle or road workers, or the lane may be needed for the emergency services. So if you see a red X, change lanes safely. Highways England, connecting the country.
Love sport.
David Prutton, what's your favourite sort of punk/rock song?
Punk/rock?
Yeah, it's all sort of funk/rock.
Oh, right, I was going to say, because if you're going punk, then it would be Pretty Vacant.
Oh, really? Because I just thought you were going to go for Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But we'll move on very, very quickly. We're going to talk a bit of Arsenal. Heartbreak in the League Cup last night, but I have to say, lots of positives. Not just a screamer from a certain Mr. Joe Willock. 2 more goals for the Brazilian wonder kid Gabriel Martinelli, who looks the real deal. But perhaps above all else, a return to first-team action for Mesut Ozil, and he looked good.
He did. That's because he's a good player.
That is, of course, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Under the Bridge.
It's a fantastic song.
It's a great. I knew you'd love it.
I love it. And you know, the lead guitarist has obviously since moved on, John Frusciante. His mother's
he's not dead.
He's not dead. His mother's choir sang the backing vocals to that.
Did they? I did not know that.
There you go.
Tell me about Mesut Ozil.
He can't play it for Toffee at all. He's rubbish on the guitar. He does what we know he can do. He's an outrageous assist maker. His assists dwarf anybody in that football club over the course of recent seasons. He shows a lightness of touch, an awareness of space, a responsibility in possession that Arsenal are absolutely crying out for. But it's quite obvious the manager doesn't trust him to do that more often than he doesn't. It's been a fractious relationship, you feel, between two men that perhaps seem relatively nice.
Well, Emery is insisting that with Ozil's performance taken into account, Arsenal were actually pretty unlucky to lose last night. Let's hear what he had to say.
We deserved with our work to have something more in this match, but really there are a lot of things positive, and I am going to take it.
David, how unlucky can you be if you concede 5 goals?
There's question marks, obviously, defensively. It's been that way at Arsenal for a very, very long period of time, and we might enjoy the silk of what Mesut Ozil brings back to this team when he's actually in it. But defensively, there's still a long way off challenging the best teams in the country, and that's just the way it is for Arsenal. It's not been addressed. Yes, they might have brought slightly different personnel in, but it's not been something across the board that's given them a whole heap of difference to what we've seen in years gone by, I don't feel.
I want to really focus in on Mesut Ozil's performance because it wasn't vintage, but it was very, very good. And he showed glimpses of what has made him one of the best attacking midfielders in world football for the last decade. That deft touch for the Ainsley Maitland-Niles goal, where he rolls it back across the face of goal. It's impossible, it seems, to even keep that in play, let alone create an assist out of it. He has got, and I'm sure he's difficult, there is clearly something going on behind the scenes. I don't believe Unai Emery has some kind of baseless vendetta against him. He is clearly a difficult bloke, but he has got magic in those boots. He's got ability and a creative vision, which no one else in that Arsenal squad has. And looking ahead to the weekend, Wolverhampton Wanderers last season took more points off the established top 6 than any other side in the league outside of that top 6. The way they do that is they sit really, really deep. They soak up all that pressure, and then they explode at you with pace. Mesut Ozil, for me, is the only player in that Arsenal squad with the requisite ability, the requisite vision to pick a way through that defence. That's not to say Aubameyang couldn't score from 20 yards or they couldn't grab a goal off a corner, but if they want to properly outplay Wolves, he has to start.
Yeah, but none of what you've just said there, Johnny, is remotely up for debate. Yes, he's a prodigiously talented footballer. Yes, he's got a weight of pass. He's got a sense of sniffing out a gap that very rarely do we see consistently at the very, very top level. He's a player that can change games. He's a player that can dictate games, but he just doesn't do it enough or consistently enough to be the type of player that Arsenal can hang the hats on. Yes, he's not been on the pitch to actively do that. That takes the debate out of arguments, the argument firing line, because if you're not on the pitch, you can't obviously influence a game. That's just common sense. But when we talk about what he did last night, when we talk about the cameo that he showed people what he can do, or reminded people of what he could do, that's never ever been in doubt. The doubt comes being able to do it in the biggest games against teams that think that they have got a way to work out Mesut Ozil, and more often than not, they've been able to do that.
Can Arsenal hang their hats on Granit Xhaka? You, of course, were a combative, deep-lying central midfield playmaker, and Granit Xhaka, I think, could be said to be in your mould. I can't imagine you, fiery though you are capable of being, I'm sure, I cannot imagine you ripping your shirt off, cupping your hands behind your ears to your own fans, swearing at them, throwing the captain's armband to the ground. Is he a player they can rely on?
You can't. You just, in that position, you just can't. As the emblem of what the club is meant to be, which is what a captain is, that's quite obviously nowhere near what they're after. The essence of what he's about. He looks like he puts effort and endeavour into the way he goes about playing for Arsenal. Yes, his mistakes are many. He's prone to lapses in concentration, and he's rash for a player of his experience, but he gives Arsenal, this is me trying to play devil's advocate, maybe a bit of bite when they've needed much bite, but I don't think they've been able to rely on him from the point of view of being able to influence a game. I don't think his manager really helped the situation with regards to the captaincy by being really flaky about it, giving it back to the players to create this management kind of consultancy demographic at the very top where they all vote, and then there's a structure of 3, 4, 5 players that make decisions, etc., and liaise between the management and the players. It just meant that a rudderless ship was then put in a position where it was being led by several people instead of one clear, crystalline voice, and that leads to situations such as this where Granit Xhaka seems to, over the course of a fair few months, become the symbol of what is frustrating everybody about Arsenal. And it's ironic that now suddenly we see a nice cameo from Mesut Ozil, and there's a faction of Arsenal fans going, that's exactly what we need. Yet when he's in the team and he's ineffectual, he's paid too much, get him out of the team.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal fans, let's get this very, very clear. I've given Arsenal, the club, the players, the fans, a kicking this week. I'm not doing it because I have a problem with Arsenal. I'm an Arsenal fan. But the Arsenal fans are some of the most toxic, some of the most prone to jump on their own team's back of anyone anywhere in the world. But you mentioned the role of the club captain right at the beginning of the show. We're talking about the Derby County situation, which we'll come back to in a moment's time. That situation with Richard Keogh, and what you see is a kind of unfairness of this expectation that he's going to be this perfect moral arbiter because he's the club captain. I think that's true. I think it's really interesting to think about it as a role which is perhaps overinflated in its importance. That said, there is a role to play. You are a role model. And if you were still playing, if you were playing in central midfield next to a player who was your captain and they behaved like Granit Xhaka, would you have any interest in playing with or for that man?
It depends how my relationship was with him. If I felt comfortable enough and close enough to be able to say, look, this is what you're doing, and this is how the team sees it, this is how the fans see it, so therefore you need to look at yourself and curb a few things, then that would be okay. If you felt like you were playing next to a bomb scare for the best part of an hour and a half every few days, you'd think, well, is he going to be continually giving the ball away? Is he going to make rash decisions out of possession? Is he going to be a liability? Then that's when you're not overly bothered if that player then plays himself out of the team. What's happened, what's been created, and what's added to that toxic atmosphere, you're absolutely right, Johnny, is the reaction to it. I can see there was elements of it when we saw their game. It was a Monday night game, and Patrice Evra had come out and said about Arsenal playing in a certain way they played Sheffield United. They didn't show up at Bramall Lane. Yes, they maybe should have had a penalty, but general consensus was Sheffield United knew exactly how to beat them, have a good set piece, and then exactly how to see the game out. Be physical, be demanding of each other, be conscientious in possession, and be energetic, which is everything that they did. And then he took umbrage at the fact that all these pundits, all these experts using the B word, saying about what's coming out of their mouths is utter rubbish. But it's been backed up by what we've seen in games where they've not been able to close games out, where they've not been able to beat teams like a Palace, where if they've got any inclination about getting back at the very highest level of English football, teams like that, I'm not saying they've got to roll them over, because Palace are a good team, well organised and have a flair that can beat the best teams in the league, but they've got to realise that that's just the day and age we live. If you respond to that type of criticism, all this debate, all this conjecture, it just gives it oxygen. It perpetuates it. So suddenly it comes from the Granit Xhaka's going after Patrice Evra, who was part of a Manchester United side that won everything. So,
and was a lot better than Granit Xhaka, by the way.
And therefore, that's how that happens. Players of that ilk get into positions of responsibility where they're asked their opinion because of how they've done in their career. That's me explaining what a pundit is, but surely we all know that. We all know that's exactly how that happens. This, when you're talking about the top level of football, that's exactly how that happens. So for him to suddenly go, well, he can't say that. Well, he can say that.
It's literally his job.
And he has said that. and
he'll say it again.
And it's been backed up by the experience of playing against Arsenal, watching Arsenal as they, as you say, moaned to the nth degree about Arsene Wenger. We're not winning the league. Yeah, but you're winning the FA Cup. Yeah, not as good anymore. We're not bothered about that. Right, okay, so you're not bothered about that. So then Arsene goes out the door. Then you get a new manager in who suddenly maybe looks at winning the Europa League. You get to the Europa League final, you don't turn up at all. You're miles away from winning trophies in a sense of what you were used to, but Spurs would be killing themselves for an FA Cup, a European trophy. So I'm not saying be careful what you wish for, but do we know exactly what and who and how they want to go about this next period of their history? Because to me it seems like, and I had a fondness for Arsenal when I was a kid, but to me it seems like all we do now is say, well, it's an Arsenal side that doesn't have Adams, Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, Gilberto Silva, etc. And then the conversation stops after that, because it's quite obviously not that anymore, just as Manchester United quite obviously isn't Keane, Beckham and the Nevilles. I don't understand where they now, what satiates an Arsenal fan, what makes them happy?
Well, that is a question. And to be fair on the Arsenal fans, we also have the question of what satiates Unai Emery. What is he after? What is he trying to build? The biggest question of all is who the next Arsenal captain should be, because it seems to me that Granit Xhaka's position is completely untenable. We're going to come back to this in more depth later in the show, but for now I want a 2-word answer. First name, surname, who should the next captain be? If you say David Prutton, I'm walking out.
Can you imagine? Let's go Hector Bellerin.
Right, so I'm with you. Various other people seem to disagree. We'll get into this later in the show.
This is Love Sport.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Hi, I'm Dean. I work for a successful shipping company in Suffolk. Ever since I heard about people's success with the spokesmansaid.com, I knew I had to investigate for myself. Every time I need to compare car insurance, home insurance and energy bills, I always contact a spokesmansaid.com. This year alone, I saved over £260 on my car insurance and also £585 on my energy bills. I saved big through a spokesmansaid.com, and you could too.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
As a busy mum, you're juggling loads of things. And when your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. but you don't always need antibiotics to help them get better. For things like sore throats, coughs and colds, you can get advice from your local pharmacy. And you don't need an appointment. To find your nearest pharmacy, search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
My mum and dad say that I don't need lots of sugar. I'm sweet enough already. So we used the Change for Life food scanner app to find out how much sugar is in our food and drink. It's surprising how much we found. So I put my detective hat on to find the healthier choices. Woohoo! Found one, Mum! You can be food smart too. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app today.
Love sport.
We've had a really harrowing piece of sporting news today, which is that triple Olympic rowing champion Pete Reed has been paralysed from the chest down after a spinal stroke at the age of 38. Really, really terrible news. Jonathan Bull is a consultant neurosurgeon and spinal surgeon. He joins us on the line now. Good afternoon, Dr. Bull. Thank you for your time. How can this happen to someone so young and so fit?
Well, it is very unusual. Strokes in the young population still represent about 10 to 15%, and by young I mean about 18 to 50. But even amongst that population, spinal strokes, so we're normally talking about the strokes that people are familiar with where it happens in the brain itself, but strokes in the spinal cord are very rare indeed. They only constitute about 1.5% of the total population of strokes that take place, so it's very rare. Typically, sometimes they can occur because of either the blood vessels themselves rupture and bleed, although it sounds in Pete's case that it's maybe more likely to be what's called an ischemic event, so where a blood vessel gets blocked off and the blood supply to the rest of the tissue beyond it is no longer available to it, and then the tissue unfortunately progressively either dies or is damaged. And the sort of causes for that typically would be in an older person, things like raised cholesterol, obviously lack of exercise, which is not going to be his case, things like smoking, high blood pressure, being overweight, diabetes. None of those would typically apply to someone who's like a post-Olympic or just recently retired Olympic athlete, especially one so successful. You do occasionally get problems in high-performance athletes because they've got such a big muscle bulk. They can be at a slightly higher risk of having deep vein thrombosis or clots in their legs, which people are familiar with, I suspect, from flying and what have you. But it's an incredibly rare event, and it's very unfortunate.
And Jonathan, when you say about the rarity of it, and it sounds, we get so many things thrown at us, don't we, on all different levels of media about looking after ourselves and what goes into a healthy human body. But as you say, with someone who was of the standard of fitness that you would need to be to compete where Pete has, it's really does sound like it's that 1 in a million shot in the dark, which is as fate would have it, has happened to him.
I think that is exactly that. I can't imagine there's anything that he's done that would predispose him to having this, and certainly at a young age, all the risk factors I think I mentioned are very unlikely to be the case, and it may just be just a very unfortunate chance. I've been a consultant for a reasonable period of time, and you see spinal strokes pretty rarely. Even in a busy practice, you'd see maybe 1 or 2 a year, depending on where they're referred. But typically, from a point of view of spinal strokes, less commonly you'd see them. But they're pretty unusual. And certainly, someone so young, it can be devastating. But the outlook is not so bleak. It's still relatively early days, so you can still show significant improvement, as people with strokes will do. It's slightly more difficult in the spinal cord because in the brain there's a bit more redundancy of function, whereas in the spinal cord all the tissue does something. But what you may find is that, especially in someone so fit and someone so strong, you may find they start to show some greater signs of recovery than you might expect in someone who's older, and they're much better able to rehab. And there would be literally no one better than Olympic athletes to try and to rehabilitate, because they're so motivated, so driven, and usually so focused. So whilst it is 1 in a million, he's probably one of the guys that has the most chance of making some sort of recovery from it.
When you say 1 in a million, do you really mean literally 1 in a million? That smaller chance?
What, as in of having the stroke?
Of recovering?
Oh, no. I think I'm saying it's 1 in a million chance of having the stroke.
Right, I see. What's the chance of recovery?
It's very difficult to put a percentage on it, but he's probably the best suited person to make a recovery from it. The only way he'd possibly better is if he was a child, and children are much more able to adapt. But because he's so fit and strong, and because I suspect, and having met him previously, he's so motivated, he's the most likely sort of individual to make a recovery. It's often determination, like a will to survive. And that drive is the drive you will see in, athletes, particularly, athletes that have won multiple gold medals. They have that utter drive and focus, and he's probably the most likely candidate to make a recovery.
And what about in the intervening days, weeks, months, the prognosis? I mean, is it an interminable level of patience that he's going to need to be able to deal with this, to be able to move forward? And after that, from the professional side of it and from the side of it that the surgeons come from, is it looking for those little incremental improvements, hoping for little bits of improvement?
Absolutely, and it's relatively early days, and often you'll have a period where there's when the initial it's called an infarct, and the initial damage to the tissue takes place, you'll have some swelling around it. And as you would have, say, with a spinal cord injury, you'll often see some level of improvement, usually one functional, one sort of vertebral level improvement. Now, in the thoracic spine, in the chest part of the body, that degree of improvement doesn't make so much of a difference. But it may be that he still has, as the swelling goes down, he'll start to see some recovery of function. And I think I saw a comment from him to say that he's been told anything from no improvement to back to normal. And I think that's fair. It's likely that he'll make hopefully some improvement, but it's very difficult to quantify that. And it's still pretty early days.
And in his Instagram post about this, he said, "My arms are still strong and my brain is still as average as it ever was," showing a fairly extraordinary ability to laugh in the face of not insignificant adversity. I gather you have met Pete before. What's he like as a person?
I only met him a few times. I mean, I rode long before he did. I mean, he rode the boat race some years after I did. But he's an incredibly determined individual. You can tell by his performance. And someone who's dealt with adversity and competition, is the kind of person who will cope with this sort of problem. And having a degree of sense of humour about it and trying to look on the positive side is absolutely key, because often you'll see people trying to cope with all the fears and anxieties. And if you can try and manage those in the short term, actually that stands you in much better stead in the long term. And this is the kind of person that has won multiple gold medals. He's got incredible drive. He's still able to laugh at himself a bit. And actually, people who have spinal cord injuries, of which this is a type, especially in the chest, will go on to live a normal life expectancy and can often manage very well independently in the long term. And also there's lots of research going on at the moment where people are, and you may have seen articles where they're providing people with robotic supporting apparatus to their lower limbs so they can actually walk independently with assistance, and that's only going to improve, and he's only 38. So there's plenty of time for him to make improvement and benefit from the developments in spinal cord injury research and rehabilitation.
Well, fingers crossed for some kind of recovery. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. Lovely to talk to you. Jonathan Bull there, who is a consultant neurosurgeon and spinal surgeon to boot. A very impressive man. Talking about a very tough situation. It's one of them where you hear it and you just think, how? Really, because this is a 38-year-old man, a very, very young guy in the prime of his life, who is significantly fitter than I will ever be. These are not the people who you think of as having terrible physical misfortune of this kind.
No, not at all. And you get the feeling that a man that's been able to have total command over what his body can do and the output that he's managed to get out of all those years of training, all those years of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, then to get something, as Jonathan there, the neurosurgeon, was talking, a bolt from the blue. It seems slightly churlish to work out or look for any form of fairness in any of it because it's just not there, is it? But from Pete's instant reaction to it, Pete's instant take on it, you can see why he has managed to scale Everest with regard to his sporting life. And you also take away from any of the actual physical details that were quite obviously and shouldn't be privy to, because that's personal and private information for Pete. But as you said in his Instagram post, Johnny, the approach to it from the point of view of how he feels about himself really could be a major factor in how the rest of his life pans out with regard to how he deals with what's happened.
Well, all of us here at Love Sport Radio wish Pete Reed all the very best with his recovery. Stay with us right here on Posh Boys on Drive. There is lots more to come before the end of the show.
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
As a parent, you always want to protect your kids, so make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles and whooping cough are on the rise and can cause severe illness, but childhood vaccinations can help prevent them. Are your child's up to date? Find out more. Search online for NHS vaccinations.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Henna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in?
No.
Hi, my name's Bob. I'm a retired civil servant from Durham. I used the advice that a spokesman said gave me to haggle with Sky to reduce my monthly payments from £86 per month to £43 per month, which was a saving of £774 over the 18-month contract. A nice little result, if I say so myself, but it was only due to a spokesman said on his brilliant advice that I was able to do a deal for the new contract.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
This is Love Sport.
When Philip Cocu took the Derby County job, he will have expected a tough task. He'll have expected a scrap to get out of that championship. The difficulty of replacing Lone Stars Harry Wilson, Mason Mount and Fikayo Tomori. He won't have expected 3 of his senior players to get themselves in trouble with the club and the law in a drink driving incident after a team night out. He won't have expected having to sack the club captain for gross misconduct. And if we're honest, he won't have expected to have to deal with Wayne Rooney joining the club in January. He's now got this situation where, with the decision to sack Richard Keogh, the media circus around Derby County is stronger than ever. It will carry on for a month, maybe 2 months. It'll then just start to quiet down. At which point, their new number 32, Wayne Rooney, will swagger into the Peak District. Sky's cameras will be following close behind. If you're the manager, surely you just want a chance to do your job in peace.
You do, because question marks are there purely on results, performances and the manager's ability within the Championship. It's hard enough for a man that's not had experience of this level of football to come in, assess a squad that we know lost key players that were on loan last season, have had to cut the cloth accordingly because of how much money's been pumped into that club over the course of a long period of time by Mel Morris. And now what he's getting judged on is not only his ability to put 11 men on a pitch to get a result and a performance, it's about all the peripheral stuff. When all the Wayne Rooney stuff broke and we saw Philip Cocu talking about it, this is me not alluding to having any inside knowledge in how it all panned out or anything with regard to knowing exactly how they found themselves in that situation. That didn't look to me like a man who went, "Can you go and get me Wayne Rooney?" and bring him into the club. That looked like looked to me to be a man who said, his boss said, by the way, you're going to get Wayne Rooney in January, and he needs to play, and is also on your coaching staff. Like, oh right, that's a goalpost changer. And then suddenly, as you say, that dies down. But underneath it all has been the performance level, which has been nowhere near good enough. All the goodwill that Frank had managed to build up with how we'd got that team so close to actually getting back in the Premier League. I'm not saying it's dissipated, but I was party to a conversation waiting for a train at Brentford train station, where Brentford were at home against Derby. This must have been just after 4 o'clock. So you've got Derby fans actively getting the train back into town to get home because they'd seen enough. It was 3-0, I think, at half-time. They'd been completely pumped. And so a laundry list of things that were wrong. Players not trying, players not looking like they know what they're doing, etc., etc., etc. Now, you look at what Derby were last season, very fluid, very creative, very exciting to watch. Now, it feels like they've gone full circle a little bit now, and the team that we looked at and the club that we looked at that historically got to springtime and had a wobble, something that we spoke to Gary Rowett, the former Derby boss, so many times, to the point of view in interviews where he's saying, I know exactly what's coming. The wobble. But it did come, and the results weren't there. And then they suddenly found themselves out of contention for automatic places and back in the playoffs. So as much as Philip Cocu's got a massive job on the pitch, he's got a huge job with regard to dealing with superstars coming in. But right now, the legal side of what's going on, I've just seen him on Sky Sports News being quoted as saying, he's sat there, we're obviously going to ask you about Richard Keogh. He's not allowed to talk about it. He can't say what's going on. But that's all we'll ask him.
It's the interesting thing, isn't it, from a journalistic point of view? And let's be honest, when it comes to Wayne Rooney, I do not believe for a second Philip Cocu is going to be pleased Rooney's coming into the squad, because I think there are serious question marks about his ability to still do a job at that level over the course of an intense season. And more to the point, he's coming in on the coaching staff. Not just that. He's coming in to do his badges and kickstart, by his own admission, a career in management. He will be looking at former teammate Steven Gerrard, who's doing a great job at Rangers, not as a coach, but as manager. He'll be looking at Lampard at Derby as manager and probably thinking, you know what, Philip, if you lose your job, who's next in line, mate?
Do you think there are any regrets at Derby, particularly with Mel Morris, with the decision to bring in Rooney that you said yourself a moment ago you thought was not quite unilateral necessarily from Mel Morris, but heavily influenced by the owner, getting wind of the fact it might be possible, thinking, yeah, probably this would be a genuine good thing for the club on a football side of things, possibly on a coaching side of things as well, in the future especially, but also a great thing for Derby County. And imagine how big a story it'll be. I mean, it completely was. It was our top story for the couple of days that it all broke. It was everywhere. And quite rightly, it was incredible stuff. But do you think he'd have any regrets about it now, given everything that's happened with some of the existing players in the squad, knowing that January's 2 months away, and it's been a month already, and it's not really got a lot quieter with the whole drink driving thing, with Richard Keogh being sacked now as well? That's going to run and run.
What will happen if Wayne Rooney comes in, and I'm talking to the right part of the microphone, if Wayne Rooney comes in and he has the impact that Mel Morris believes truly that he can bring to Derby, if he gets Derby back in the Premier League. Now, I'm not saying that the Keogh situation, the Bennett and Lawrence situation would be completely forgiven and it would be completely boxed off and consigned to history. But knowing what football's like, I would think that the powers that be would see that as a sound investment to get away from what this is. They'd say, it was just the end justified the means, regardless of how it's structured, regardless of how it comes about. But if they're suddenly in the Premier League, their days of Championship mediocrity will be very, very quickly forgotten.
But that's such a huge if. I mean, Wayne Rooney turned 34 a couple of weeks ago, right?
But that's what it is. That's all this is. It's a massive gamble. It's a massive gamble.
So if Wayne Rooney comes in, and what a Derby at the moment, it's something like 15th in the Championship, aren't they? Admittedly, in the crazy league that is, that means you're about 2 points off the top of the league as well. No, but I think they're 9 points off top.
9 points off
which
top.
Isn't insurmountable, obviously far from it, and playoffs even closer, and they got there last season, got to the playoff final, of course, as well. We're so close to the Premier League. But that could go one or two ways. In 2 months' time, and of course 6 months from now, whether Wayne Rooney has much of an impact or not. And then next season, he turns 35 at the start of it. And I'm not saying that players can't be any good at 35 or they can't have an impact, especially at the Championship level, but it's also becoming less and less likely. And I think he's on, is it an 18-month contract initially? So that's quite a long time. You're paying quite high wages. Even if it's the betting company, 32 Red, that are helping Derby out with that, it's still a big investment, a big gamble, and a big sideshow for a club that has had, let's be honest, a lot of non-footballing publicity in the last year and a half, which I'm sure Mel Morris likes some of. I'm sure it's good for commercial reasons, but are they any closer to the Premier League than they were 60, 18 months ago?
Right now, no. It is a huge gamble for a club as well, that if you look at the players that moved on, the likes of Wilson and Mason Mount, the real kind of finger that's been pointed at Derby this season is lack of legs in midfield. Wayne Rooney's not going to come and suddenly give you...
He could do that 3 years ago when he's trying to play Everton and Man United.
And exactly, so whether he's going to be used in a number 10 position where they're just going to allow him to float around, or whether we saw him latterly when he was at United sometimes playing in the base of midfield, he's quite obviously got the range of passing to be able to show the rest of the Championship how it's done, but it's still one man in a team sport in a situation where he's not in his early 20s. He's not at the very peak. Plus, there'll be we'll watch him come in, and Derby's season will be defined by whether he takes him up or not. And if he doesn't take him up, people say it was a failure. If he does take him up, we'll say it was a justified gamble.
And in reality, it might not be massively to do with him either, whichever way, but people are going to want to attribute it. But let me put this to you just quickly, that since maybe Lampard was appointed and there was success in that, and there's been some success since and some obviously not so much, but that Derby has maybe become a little bit arrogant as a club, that it's thought that because it was able to attract Frank Lampard and then Philip Cocu, that it got arrogant about the fact that it didn't need to replace the quality of Mount, Tomori and Harry Wilson, which were three of the best players in the Championship as individuals last season. Tomori was Derby's own player of the season, that they could bring in Wayne Rooney and deal with the sideshow, that he would also bring some miracle promotion to Premier League when at best that's a maybe, that they've just started to believe their own publicity a little bit.
Well, they've always felt to me like they felt they were a big hitting club in the second tier of English football, but I said this about all the clubs that have been stuck down there: Forest, Wednesday, Leeds, ones that
Sheffield Wednesday.
Sheffield, yeah. There's a
few David Prutton alumni,
and that's the reason why they're all there. But there's a presumption that because it was deemed a big club or they've had recent Premier League history, that they let's get this club back to where it belongs. It doesn't belong there at all. It belongs exactly where it is, because you've not been able to get over that final hurdle of winning a playoff final, getting to the playoffs, or automatically getting yourselves promoted. So Mel Morris has run that club with significant financial input off his own back. So I think the Chelsea connection was there because of Frank. He was able to get those players in. They've had to change it slightly this year because they couldn't do what they were doing financially without actually getting promoted. It was a very broad and known kind of fact within the Championship that they were paying massive amounts. I mean, so you see Richard Keogh on 20 reportedly 24 grand a week. I mean, in the grand scheme of what I've heard rumour wise of what players earn there, that isn't anywhere near the top.
Doesn't even make him a top earner.
No, it makes him a very significant earner. But I've heard players in that respect being on more money than that. But it's
and for a team that haven't recently come down, by the way, was it 10 years since they were in the Premier League?
That's the thing, though, and haven't been
and record-breakingly bad when
they were.
And yes, they've been in the playoffs. I mean, there was that capitulation under Steve McLaren where on the very last day of the season they just completely fell apart and got nowhere near it. So it's a strange position that they find themselves in because of you look at, yes, maybe a decade ago being in the Premier League, but that's a hell of a long time, and the quantum leap that we've seen between the two divisions means that if they did go up as well, whatever Mel's managed to kind of spend so far, he's going to have to spend a hell of a lot more again.
And let's be honest about Rooney. I'm a big fan of his, but he is not a player who is at his best when the side are struggling. That isn't when he excels. He tries too hard. He makes silly challenges. And he may be 34. He's not mature. He's not got a cool head. And I'm not convinced he's actually a leader. I think recipe for disaster.
This is Love Sport.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Hello, I'm Tim from Bolsover. I'm a retired teacher. I was looking for a better electricity deal from my parents when I got an email from a spokesman said it was a fixed deal for 2 years, which was better for my parents, less for them to worry about. And when I had to look at the sums, I had to recheck because I couldn't quite believe it. They were going to save over £900 each year they were on that deal. Needless to say, we signed up pretty quickly.
with a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Driving too close to the car in front gives you less time to react. You may not realize that you're tailgating. Leave a 2-second gap between you and the vehicle in front. When it's wet, leave a 4-second gap. By staying back, you give yourself time to react. Stay safe. Stay back. Highways England, connecting the country.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Lots to come on Love Sport Drive. We're going to be joined by George Shooter, the former England hooker who played in the 2007 World Cup final. Disappointment then against South Africa with the try that never was. Can we set those wrongs right on Saturday? And we're going to be joined by Philip Lando as well, an employment lawyer at Lando Law Solicitors. Are Derby in a bit of trouble here, not just with the situation on the pitch, but off it? They've sacked Richard Keogh, but they've kept Bennett and they've kept Lawrence. They were the people driving the cars in question while drunk. If they're sacking one, do they have to sack all three? We'll be talking Arsenal captaincy. Is Hector Bellerin your man? But first of all, it's time for the latest headlines.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker.
This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 5. ITV insists the safety of people it works with is always the priority after MPs accuse it of a corporate failure of responsibility. The Media Committee seen footage from a whistleblower on the Jeremy Kyle show, suggesting people were humiliated. It's looking at reality TV after a participant on that Now Acts programme took his own life. Committee Chair Damien Collins explains what the video showed.
One man, probably in his 50s, who is sitting with his head in his hands in his lap, weeping, who is still being, pursued by cameras, pursued by Jeremy Kyle. We were very concerned that people who were clearly in distress were being treated in that way.
Democrats in the House of Representatives have moved a step closer to impeaching Donald Trump after winning a key vote. They'll look at holding public hearings in Congress over claims the president pressured Ukraine into investigating one of his political rivals. He denies that. Boris Johnson's promising to invest in public services as he hits the election campaign trail. Today was the day the Prime Minister had promised to take the UK out of the EU. He says he's frustrated that hasn't happened, but he's also focusing on other plans.
Support our fantastic wealth-creating sector, lift people up, invest in a high-skill, high-wage but low-tax economy so that we have the income that we need to pay for fantastic public services.
Labour's Jeremy Corbyn's promised real change. The Lib Dems say they're the strongest party for cancelling Brexit. Meanwhile, a report's found a £100,000 grant awarded to a firm owned by one of Mr Johnson's friends was appropriate. The PM was accused of treating US businesswoman Jennifer R. Curie more favourably when he was London mayor. The number of full-time firefighters has fallen by almost a quarter in a decade, but there's been a 2% increase of call-outs across England since last year. Sport, Hearts has sacked manager Craig Levein. He leads the club second from bottom in the Scottish Premiership with just one win from 11 matches. That's the latest. I'm Annie Green.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker.
This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening. You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. That's me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, and Love Sport's very own David Prutton. He's got his iPad out. He's got all the gear, this boy, and he's got all of the stats for you throughout the show. Your top stories this evening. Eddie Jones has picked an unchanged 15 for the first time in 3.5 years. That's as England prepare for Saturday's Rugby World Cup final against South Africa. Richard Keogh's wife has described the defender as a professional scapegoat after Derby County sacked him for gross misconduct, despite Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett remaining at the club. And Liverpool are embroiled in a spying storm. The FA are demanding an explanation after Liverpool employees were accused of accessing Manchester City's Scout 7 system. We had Spygate as well with Bielsa. I just wonder whether there's more spying going on than we're aware of. Maybe subterfuge is left, right and centre. Hopefully, England's rugby camp is being kept under lock and key. We had reports of a mystery cameraman filming training before that New Zealand semi-final. I don't want any kind of James Bond characters interfering with the final. And former England captain and 2003 World Cup winner Phil Vickery joined Love Sport Breakfast this morning and told Richard and Patrick how he went about preparing for his 2 World Cup finals.
Having the minerals, having the backbone and having the spine now to go out and do it. We've talked about it. We've got the ability, we've got the skill. Go out and do it and be proud of each other. And obviously I can't say it. I'd say it in the change room because it doesn't sound very good on radio. But you get my gist. I tell you what, boys, I'd be that emotional. I'd be crying. I'd be all over the place, really. But just hoping everyone's sort of taking notice, apart from people going, "Oh my God, he's off again."
How does the kind of Chilean speech strike you as preparation for a big game?
I think as long as it's good, as long as it's well thought out,
it's not rubbish.
No,
not a rubbish
exactly. But maybe that sense of it being well thought out would take away from the emotional impact of what something off the cuff would be able to create. I think being in that position where you get the person at the right time to say the right thing, it's about the timing element of it. It's about being able to live in the moment, about all the players buying into what the emotion is at that particular period of time. And we've seen before, these types of speeches can really rouse the creative and the motivational side of what a rugby match is. I remember the documentary, is it Living with Lions? This is from quite a while ago now, where you had Sir Ian McGeechan, didn't you, talk to the team as a whole, and you had different factions, the forwards sat talking together, you had the backs sat talking together, and obviously that's a documentary which is edited and can be made to look any which way, but I found some of the words and the terminology used in that extremely inspiring and spine-tingling when you watch it. And then after that, it's left into the lap of the players to make sure that whatever they've been told, however it's motivated them, carries on into an actual professional performance on the pitch, being able to do what they are there to do. Because we've spoken to a sports psychologist, we've listened to former players, and the build-up is there for a reason. But fundamentally, once those players are across the white line, once the whistle goes, it's a cliche, but that's when they're there. That's when that's the element of being on stage and they're born to perform. That's when they've got to turn up.
Phil Vickery also had his say on what beating South Africa on Saturday morning would mean for the players involved.
I know we watch a lot of TV shows and a lot of reality TV programmes, and you hear people talking about life-changing things. To become a world champion, to win Rugby World Cup, will change those boys' lives forever. It changed my life, genuinely.
We're joined now by George Shooter, former England hooker who played in the 2007 World Cup final. Evening, George. Thank you for joining us. It's less than 48 hours to go now. Are you feeling confident? Will it be life-changing for those involved?
To answer the first question, feeling very confident, actually. I think they're just in a really good space in terms of the style of play they've adopted and the intensity they're playing at, and the skill and the commitment they're showing. So on the back of the last 2 weeks, I'm very, very confident of them winning on Saturday. In terms of changing your life, absolutely. Phil Vickery said it there. He went through that in 2003. It is a life-changing. I mean, there's only been 2 England teams that won World Cups in men's sport. The women's rugby have won a few of them. But I mean, it's such a momentous occasion in any sportsman's lifetime. Playing in a World Cup final was a great honour for me. Actually winning it would have. I couldn't really imagine the difference it would make. Speaking to guys who were in 2003, yes, it will be a life-changing financially, in terms of your notoriety, your fame, for want of a better term, and professionally, it's going to be a huge a huge change of a huge change in your life.
George, we talk about it that in those types of hallowed terms, we talk about it all the way through from the wonderful semi-final performance against New Zealand going into this game. We hear about it being genuinely life-changing. How can the players separate that from the actual reason that they're there to perform in a game of rugby that they know they're more than capable of winning, but all this white noise, everything around it, the circus, that serves sometimes as a distraction, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, but that's part of being a professional sports person is actually dealing with the distractions that are not part of the sport. You can train every day on the rugby field or whatever field it is and achieve whatever, but the secret is always whether it's criticism, whether it's in this case support or the potential of fame and fortune, whatever it is. There's always those distractions on the outside, and the best sports people manage to block all that out. It's impossible to completely ignore it, and it will always be at the back of your mind, and you'll be there waiting for the anthems to be over, and you're of course you're focused on the game, but it's inevitable as a human that you'll have a part of your mind will be thinking about the what ifs and what will happen if this and that. But then, I say the key is the mentally strong sports people manage to control those emotions, control those feelings, and compartmentalise them for 80 minutes. And then once that's done, you can then let everything flood out.
So Eddie Jones, George, has gone with the same team that beat New Zealand, and he spoke before that side when he was questioned about differences in personnel and who had made way for other players, and he said he was basically saying along the lines, I will pick the relevant team for the specific game that we're playing. Does that mean that the final offers up the same types of problems perhaps for England to overcome, or has he just got to the point where now he is more than happy with his side and he trusts them going into the most important game?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily pick horses for courses when it comes to a World Cup final. You pick the team that got you here. I don't think it's a case of them picking a certain team to face South Africa because, again, without wanting to write South Africa off, I think the best team in the world is still New Zealand, and they were dispatched last week by this team. So the sort of logic tells you that if you can beat the best team in the world, then you can beat one of the other top 5 teams as well. So I think he's probably right. I mean, I wasn't expecting any changes between the quarter-final and the semi-final, and he sort of threw the curveball and started George Ford at 10, which again turned out to be the right decision. So I think it's got to a stage where we just have to trust Eddie Jones, and regardless of what he does, he could probably pick himself on the wing, and people would say, actually, yeah, he's probably right.
That would be worth seeing.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be a gamble. But no, I think he knows this team. I just think after the final whistle on Saturday, they looked so confident and so calm. They didn't look as though they won a semi-final. They looked like they just won another game and they were ready to go for the next one. So I think they really are focused. This group of players really are focused on this game, and part of that's Eddie Jones's his leadership. That's what he's groomed them for.
George, of course, you took part in that 2007 final where you didn't manage to get the result against South Africa. But of course, lots of people feel that you did, or rather that you should have been allowed to, with that now infamous ghost try, the try that never was. Is there still a feeling of injustice there? And if we go and win this on Saturday, would that go some way towards laying those ghosts to rest?
I don't think so on either count, Royce. I don't have any animosity. I don't feel cheated out of a World Cup final. I felt very lucky we were there in the first place. We probably didn't deserve to be there. We certainly didn't deserve to be there 4 weeks before it. And the technology's moved on. I think at the time it was probably people were 50-50 as to whether it was a try or not. It was given a no try. I think that was probably the right decision. I've not actually seen the replay probably since then, to be honest, but yeah, it was one of those things. It was called in the heat of the moment. I mean, there was an equally pivotal moment, I think, just after half time, right, where Victor Matfield came from nowhere and cut Matt Tate down when he looked like he was scoring another post. So yeah, the games are, especially big games, big finals, there are one or two of those sort of little incidents that can turn the game, and those incidents went South Africa's way in 2007. I mean, if they were to win on Saturday, no, I don't think it doesn't really make any difference, to be honest. To certainly doesn't change the result from 2007, and it doesn't. I don't feel the resentment. I still feel proud to have played in the World Cup final. Disappointed to have lost, obviously, but I don't think there's any of that bad feeling. Just purely because I don't think we really expected to be there, so it was a bit of a bonus, really. But no, this week's result won't have any sort of any effect on the 2007 result at all.
So all the chat seems to be about England going into it as favourites after coming off the back of that wonderful performance against New Zealand, George. But what realistically do England need to look out for from South Africa? What are their biggest threats?
Well, I think actually probably what South Africa are capable of doing is the biggest threat. They've got, I believe they've got Cheslin Colby back available. I think if South Africa were to play like they did against Wales, England actually would be fairly happy with that and be quite confident of winning quite comfortably because they can tackle these one-out runners and I think England will play at a tempo that South Africa can't live with. I think the biggest threat South Africa should have is to come out and throw the ball around and play, get the ball to the wide channels, the wingers and the fullback, get Faf de Klerk running the show, running around the breakdown, testing the guards, testing the defence around the breakdown. I think that's where the threat lies. I don't think this South African team can just bully England, and I don't think for a moment that a coach as good as Rassie Erasmus will expect to do that. Sure, he'll back his players, he'll back his game plan and tactics, but I think they've also got to have an eye on the fact that England's defence has been outstanding. I don't think you can just bulldoze them. So the unexpected, we haven't seen this from South Africa much. So I think the unexpected, potentially the unexpected, chucking the ball around bit could be something England aren't expecting.
We're talking a lot about preparation, of course. If you were in that dressing room before the game, would you go for the kind of Churchillian speech? Would you be aiming to get everyone pumped up? Or would you be saying, listen, you know what you're going out to do, keep it calm, keep it focused, execute this game plan?
Yeah, there's not really, this sort of Hollywood movies is the Churchillian speeches and all that sort of stuff. There's nothing really left to say. You're in a World Cup final. If you're there to pump people up and fire them up to play a game, then you're probably in amongst the wrong sort of people. These are professional rugby players who know the score. They've played in many games and they know how to play games. So it's not a case of firing people up and making them climb up the walls and headbutt the ceiling and all that sort of stuff. It's more about keeping everyone calmer. Probably everyone's individual. There'll be some players who want to be fired up. There'll be other players who need to be calmer and relaxed. I guess. As a captain or as a head coach or whatever it is, you've just got to find the right balance and make sure you're getting your messages across, because that's ultimately what you want to do. It's not the game needs to be played, but the preparation will have been done already, and there shouldn't be any need to fire people up.
Finally, George, who's going to win it, and what's the score going to be?
I generally think England are the favourites, and I think they'll win it. I'm waiting to be accused of typical English arrogance now, just predicting that. But I think they'll be relatively comfortable. I would give them 8 to 10 points. The score, maybe sort of 25, 16, 18, something like that. I think England, if they can play anywhere near the way they did against the All Blacks in Australia, I just think they have far too much for South Africa to cope with.
Well, George, I back your confidence. Thank you for your time. Great to talk to you. George Shooter there, former England hooker who played in the 2007 World Cup final. Seemed to be
his sound settings on his phone as
well.
Yeah,
we had a little bit of Guns N' Roses in the mix. The occasional doorbell kept us on our toes.
Yeah, a little bit of sound effects. You don't mind that to go along with a bit of rugby punditry. Don't mind that at all.
No, we don't. Of course we don't. Maybe we could get a Slash in to get them all geared up. I've changed his role.
Do you know what was... I love the way George talks. It's very black or white, very matter of fact. And like I said, it's that mystique around professional sport. What happens behind changing room doors, and if it looks like someone's standing up to say something. And he's absolutely right. If you need that at that level going out to the Rugby World Cup final, you shouldn't be there. I love that matter-of-fact approach to, it's professional, this is my job, this is what I do, so why wouldn't I be up for it?
I would need Such a big inspirational speech. Cuddle the works. To make me go out against men of that size, knowing they're going to be clattering into me. No, thank you. I would need the full Churchill. Lots to come on Posh Boys on Drive, including an employment lawyer. We're talking Richard Keogh. This one isn't going away.
Love sport.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in?
No.
Hi, I'm Marilyn from Oxfordshire. My current insurance company quoted £245.08 to reinsure. And a spokesman said, obtain me a price of £173.49 for the same cover. This was a fantastic saving for me. And next time my car insurance comes up for renewal, I will be going through a spokesman said. No doubt about that.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Brilliant, I've finally quit.
I can keep up with my kids now.
I feel like I've got my life back.
It's an amazing feeling when you stop smoking. Experience it for yourself with help from Smoke Free. Our range of free support can help you quit for good. From our app to emails, face-to-face and online communities. Search Smoke Free, because there's only one you.
This is Love Sport.
Man United might not thank me, but get the contract out, put it on the table, let him sign it, let him write whatever numbers he wants to put on there, give him what he's done now since he's come in, and let him sign the contract and go. Ollie's at the wheel, man. He's doing it. He's doing his thing. Man United are back.
Rio. Well, maybe he's got a point, because normally when we play that, we're playing it to mock Rio, to mock Manchester United, to wind Ole Gunnar Solskjaer up. I know he's a regular listener of the show. But at the moment, things are looking up at Old Trafford. They've won their last 3 against Partizan Belgrade, Norwich and Chelsea. But could they be about to go on a 9-match winning streak? If we look at their next 6 fixtures, they look pretty favourable. They've got Bournemouth away, winnable. Partizan at home, winnable. Brighton at home, winnable. Sheffield United away, tough, but winnable on paper. Astana away, if you don't win that, sack him now. And Villa at home should be winning that one as well. Winnable. And then, of course, you've got Spurs, which is the most winnable of the lot, unless they sort things out. We could be looking at a 9-10 game winning run here. It's obviously a lot of what ifs, but if that happens, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will be doing the business.
He will, until the next time he's deemed not to be doing the business and it all comes rearing its ugly head again. So they are eminently winnable, as you quite rightly say, Johnny. But it's being able to do that. The game's in front of them. Bournemouth, you feel, would fancy themselves at home against Manchester United, and we can go through the list. But from the point of view of how they're now perceived, maybe, I'm not saying that element of the fear factor coming back facing Manchester United will suddenly come forth, and these clubs will be wilting at the very prospect of coming up against them. They'll know the weaknesses. They'll know that there's still a team there that defensively doesn't cover themselves in glory, and I think it evens the keel a little bit for Ole going into this run of games, but still huge question marks about the direction of where that club's going.
Is there a question here, regardless of the kind of practicalities of tactics and behaviour on the pitch? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has sorted out the mood at Manchester United. I think he's sorted out the atmosphere, and there's an argument that he's sorted out the culture. It's anecdotal, but before Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took charge, United hadn't won a game at Stamford Bridge since 2012. Ollie has won there twice in 8 months. That is one hoodoo he seems to have broken. Is it worth, in this instance, showing a young, developing coach a bit of patience?
Well, patience is the one thing that he keeps asking for, and we saw Jose Mourinho mention the fact that he'd love to have a job where it was you were able to say, let's keep building for the future, and always talk about the future and almost kind of forget what has happened in the interim. I think, yeah, it's a pat on the back for what they've done against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, but that awful run of games coming off the back end of last season. I mean, losing to Wolves, losing to Everton, losing to Manchester City, losing to Cardiff, losing to Crystal Palace. I mean, well done for winning at Stamford Bridge, but you've still been average against teams that you really should be walking all over. So he needed to address that. He needed to make sure that conversation about Manchester United was about what happened on the pitch. And I'm sure out of all the people that he's aiming to placate and please, maybe right now Ed Woodward is the happiest one because it's drawn his name out the firing line for at least a couple of weeks.
Does Ed Woodward care when his name is in the firing line? Seriously, because his job actually is to make money. He is doing that, and he's doing that in some style.
Absolutely.
I do not believe that the fact that the fans don't like Ed Woodward has any bearing on his job security at all.
No, it doesn't. He answers to the bean counters that either put a lot of money into Manchester United or mortgage it for a lot of money as well. So he has got a specific role to do. He answered the critics, didn't he, saying that I'm not the person that sits and watches YouTube and just signs players off that. It's not
I love the idea that that is someone's job,
exactly.
by the way.
But I mean, and we've all fallen into a YouTube wormhole. I'm not watching
Fred
football.
Looks good.
Watching Fresh Prince of
Turn your
Bel-Air from
laptop off,
25 years
Johnny.
ago.
It's 3 a.m.
Yes. So the structure of the club should be one that facilitates giving the manager the best that he needs. We looked at the players that they brought in the summer with Wan-Bissaka, James and Harry Maguire. Players that, as the weeks kind of roll on, are cementing something of sort of solidarity with the rest of the United squad moving forward. We quite rightly lauding Marcus Rashford after a wonderful goal last night, and maybe, just maybe, he's been in certain quarters the victim of being judged by what United have done in the last 6 months instead of what he's done over the course of bursting onto the scene.
It says something, doesn't it, when Man United's executive vice chairman is forced to deny that he watches players on YouTube and then just signs them for huge sums of money. I love the idea that you do have Ed Woodward sitting in his office and he's just scrolling through YouTube. When he comes to a player he likes, he phones down to the recruitment. He goes,
"Get on this,
Matt. I've seen this fella, Brazilian 18-year-old. He's called Martinelli. No, I'm not going to get another one. Martinelli, Gabriel Martinelli. Look him up. Look, Ed, we've spoken about this. The last 17 have gone terribly. I'm not having any of this." As a call gone in to say, "See Martinelli last night."
But he knows so little about football, if the rumours are to be believed, that if that was his role, he would find himself watching like a teenage Sergio Aguero and going, "Who is this kid? We got to go and get him.
That's
get
10
him
years
from
old."
Argentina." Yeah, no, City did that, actually, Ed. I'm really sorry. They
And it
beat
worked
you
out
to
really well.
Yeah, it's gone all right. When we're talking about Rashford, there's quite a stat for you. Out of his 52 Manchester United goals, 13, that's 25%, have come against the so-called top 6. Big game player. If he can do it against them, if he can do it on his debut, Premier League debut against Arsenal, if he can do it from 35 yards against Chelsea, why can't he do it against Burnley?
Hang on, just to pick you up on that maths there, Johnny. I know this stat will have been advertised at you rather than you come up with it yourself, but the top 6 gives you 5 teams of the 20 that you play against on the 19 you play against. That is 25%. He is scoring the exact right amount of goals against the top 6, you could argue.
Okay, come off it. If it's directly proportional that you would score the same amount of goals against all teams, regardless of ability.
It doesn't take cut competition into account either, does it? I just thought I'd try and remind you. I think I've got one. I've got one on the line.
No, the
Wow.
reason why you've got one is because my maths is so bad. You uttered the words, "I've got to call you out on your maths." I was thinking, oh no, not live on the radio. I was getting flashbacks to year 5.
If Rashford equals 52, then what does X equal?
Yeah, if Ed Woodward is
The
moving at
median
a
line
speed
coming
of
out.
52 miles an hour, the wind speed is 37 miles an hour, and Jose Mourinho has 8 apples, why are Manchester
All sat
United
behind
bad
the
at
ball.
football? Yeah.
If Ed Woodward has 3 Brazilian youngsters in his left hand,
Why is Fred still dodgy? Are they going to really get back to their best in the next 2 years? Let's assume that Woodward really does back Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, gives him a couple of seasons. Is he the man, if we're honest, to get them back up to the top of the tree?
Well, it depends what... if it's deemed what Manchester United's take on top of the tree is, that's
I'm
serial
talking-
domination.
Yeah,
That's
competing at the top of the table every year.
But then the benchmark for United was winning it every year and going again when the team needed to evolve. Now, do we look at it and say that if a team gets back there for a season and wins the Premier League, then that's enough? That's quantifiably and
Well, it's a
justifiably
start.
enough? It's a start, but it's the dynastic way of looking at it. I don't think is going to be there. We talk about what Ollie might be capable of. He needs the resources to be able to do that. And again, whenever we have this discussion, and he's in a position where ex-teammates, ex-players, people of real stature and in the kind of glorified firmament of what Old Trafford and Manchester United history is, have said, you've got to stick with him. But if you keep sticking with him and they still end up in mid-table, regardless of who comes in the door, then suddenly that's a very different discussion to have, because it's then, well, we've given you what we've been able to give you, but you can't get what you need to get out of these players. Therefore, the vicious cycle goes around again, where a manager leaves, another one comes in and tries to do exactly the same.
Do they need a striker? There's been a lot of chat about this season. They let Lukaku go. They let Sanchez go. They arguably didn't replace either player. But when they are fit, as they were against Norwich City, that unorthodox front two, in which neither is quite a number 9, of Rashford and Martial, does look pretty compelling.
It does. I still think they need the stellar signings. It's a team which is expensively put together, but again, it's done with the greater good, i.e. it being greater than some of its parts, not standout players, because the standout players that they brought in, yes, Lukaku's come in and gone out the door, Paul Pogba, MIA, it's still the quandary that baffles everyone that looks at that club and wonders how it hasn't gone according to plan. But then maybe you reverse that back to why a player was allowed to go in the first place, because the greatest manager that they've ever had kind of deemed him to be surplus to requirements. If he was that good first time round, he'd have been there and he'd have had a decade's worth of service at a club where he would be getting towards several hundreds worth of appearances. So I still think they need... McTominay's come into the fold, hasn't he? And he's been what United have needed in midfield. Again, jury's out with a young player coming in, whether he can do it over the course of a long period of time. They're in a weird holding pattern at this moment in time, because we're looking at potential over output. And how long do you wait for potential to become consistent output? There's a school of thought. I was listening to quotes from Brendan Rodgers talking about the defender Soyuncu, he's really blossomed since Harry Maguire's left. He's a fantastic footballer, but took a while to settle in. But now we expect players to come in and hit the ground running, and I don't think we're out of order for thinking that.
But the Soyuncu example is a very good one of why we shouldn't expect players to come in and completely hit the ground running, because Soyuncu was heavily linked with United. He was heavily linked with Arsenal. Neither club went for him, and the reason for that I saw cited in a lot of places was he could not speak a word of English, really not a word, and he was quite slow learning it. And it may well be that it took him the best part of the year to get to be able to communicate with his teammates, and in a role like centre half where you're a leader and an organiser, you need to be able to speak. I think particularly younger football fans have this kind of FIFA-ised, football managerised perception of how football works, where a footballer is good, so he comes into a team and plays well because he's a good footballer. They don't think of them as people.
But expectation levels are different. With the greatest respect, that signing for Leicester City, yes, I know they won the Premier League in an anomalous season when the big hitters were nowhere near it. The expectation is different at Manchester United. They didn't buy Soyuncu suddenly for an inflated fee because they were Leicester City. They didn't at all. Manchester United buy Harry Maguire and he becomes the most expensive defender on the planet. And everyone goes, that's insane, but we understand why, because Manchester United have bought him.
I think he's been okay.
He has been okay, but the expectation level far supersedes what reality is. Because he costs that much, should he never miss miss time a challenge, never miss a tackle, never let a goal in? No, because it's a team sport.
For 85 million, he should be fluent in Italian and fly, frankly.
And be able to predict the future.
And be able to bring Cagliari Soyuncu with him free of charge. Listen, one man who will be available free of charge is Richard Keogh, but he's got some serious injury rehab to do first. He feels rather hard done by to have been sacked by Derby County. Coming up, we're going to be talking to an employment lawyer and finding out whether he might just have a case.
Love sport.
Think the energy price cap will save you money? Think again. You could be saving a lot more on cheaper energy tariffs. Price comparison site A Spokesman Said will show you just how much money you could be saving against your current tariff. Don't throw away your hard-earned money to the energy companies. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could switch to cheaper bills in minutes.
Aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
Hello, my name's Paula. I'm from the Shropshire area and I'm a business development manager. I use A Spokesman Said for my car insurance, where I've saved over £500, and also on travel insurance as well. So in total, me and my family have saved about £600. I would definitely use it again, and I would definitely recommend it.
With aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
As a busy mum, you're juggling loads of things. And when your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics to help them get better. For things like sore throats, coughs and colds, you can get advice from your local pharmacy. And you don't need an appointment. To find your nearest pharmacy, search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
This is Love Sport.
David Prutton, you are a man with a long and storied career in the Premier League and the Football League, taking in such exotic destinations as Leeds, Southampton, Nottingham, Scunthorpe and Colchester. You've seen a few things. You've been part of a fair few dressing rooms. Have you ever seen anything as outrageous as this drink-driving incident at Derby County?
Nothing as extreme as this. Nothing as what could have been potentially sinister with regard to how it actually turned out. And obviously with the twist in the tale that we've seen over the last couple of days with Richard Keogh's position being deemed untenable and well, in theory, told to sling his hook, really. It's not something I've seen. Footballers misbehaving. I mean, there's a headline that goes back for the ages, doesn't it? But in this instance, nothing as extreme or as serious as this at all.
Well, it's had very extreme ramifications. Of course, club captain Richard Keogh was reportedly offered the option of accepting a seriously reduced salary or being sacked for gross misconduct. He has been given the latter choice. He's been sacked by Derby County. We're hearing he is appealing that decision, and his wife has now described him as a professional scapegoat. Philip Lando is an employment lawyer at Lando Law Solicitors, and he joins us on the line now. Good evening, Philip. Thanks for your time. Explain this to me. I am not a lawyer. I do not have a great legal mind, but I look at this situation and I cannot for the life of me see how it is right, proper or fair that Derby County can sack Richard Keogh for gross misconduct whilst they have kept the other two players involved who were driving the cars after drinking under their employ? How does this work?
Yeah, well, it is rather strange, and you're thinking about how can this possibly be is absolutely justified, because on the face of it, I think most people would be thinking that. The only difference, though, or the main difference, is because Richard Keogh is the club captain, and the other players aren't, and therefore he has a greater responsibility, if you like, to not bring his employer, who is the club, into disrepute. And I imagine he will have a clause in his contract specifying that he can't be injured as a result of unnecessary or risky behaviour, for example. That's not uncommon. And therefore, although he wasn't driving, he is the captain. He was drinking. It was obviously a sort of a situation which it would have been better that he wasn't in. And the club want to save money. And therefore, gross misconduct, which gets somebody out, whoever they are, very quickly, is a good way to save money. And if they can do it in accordance with their contractual terms, then the club can get away with it. Is that,
Philip, I'm really intrigued to see what you say there about the fact that he's the captain, because sometimes when you look at captains, and we've discussed it earlier on in the show today about the role that they perform in team sport, and sometimes it's a bit vague, sometimes it's given to the best player, sometimes it's given to the most responsible, the loudest, etc. But it seems to me that when you get down to the minutiae of what he has been sacked for, I presume it'd have to be there in writing with regard to his position as captain and what is deemed under his remit as captain leading the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, it would be surprising if the club hadn't taken legal advice and hadn't felt confident that they could ultimately get away with a gross misconduct charge against him. So, in fact, they tried not to, because they invited him to take a pay cut, which is a form of sanction in itself, not as draconian as gross misconduct, of course, but it is a sanction. He presumably has taken advice at that time as well, and decided, actually, I've got a stronger claim by declining that pay cut and taking them to court for the balance of my contractual term, because that's going to be a more obviously profitable claim than taking a pay cut. So it's all going to boil down to the legal position. Were the club justified in adopting a contractual term to say this is gross misconduct, your behaviour was unacceptable, is the individual, Keogh in this case, able to say, actually, you don't have a contractual right to do that, and I want the balance of my money, please.
Philip, from what you're saying, it sounds quite likely that Derby County would have good legal grounds for sacking all three players. With that in mind, they haven't sacked Bennett, they haven't sacked Lawrence, and it is plainly clear to all football fans that they are not going to. Is it unfair of me to then look at that as a purely cynical decision, where they are sacking Keogh because it is cheap for them to do so, and keeping hold of the other two because they represent potentially valuable assets?
It's not an unfair conclusion. However, we don't know the basis upon which the decision was made. On the face of it, yeah, you may be entirely right, but and it may be also that there are contractual provisions in Keogh's clauses that there aren't in the others, and therefore they were in a stronger legal position with regards to Keogh than the other two. But it is rather strange, yes. There is no consistency there, and as you say, he wasn't even driving. But the flip side is, as I said, he was the captain, and normally the chiefs of any enterprise, if you like, whether a football club or otherwise, are held in a greater responsibility, if you like, to uphold the ethos of the people who they work for, and it's a junior member of staff, whoever they are not always going to be treated in the same way as the most senior.
Is there the trouble here, Philip, when you look at perhaps the length of what this kind of litigation can take with regard to the slap bang in the middle of a football season? Yes, football in capital letters is the most important thing in the world, but obviously this could really loom large, especially if it drags on for a significant period of time, with both sides presumably from the outset looking like they don't want to give in.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, they will come to some mutually acceptable agreement and sign a legally binding document that set out terms. It often happens that way. If not, then it will end up in a public forum in the courts, and everyone will see exactly what's been going on.
You'd have thought that isn't in Derby County's interest, is it? I mean, do you reckon the most likely scenario here is they settle for less than the entire value of the contract, but rather more than they were offering Keogh in that pay cut?
Yes, that's a normal type of outcome in these types of situations. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, Philip, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Really fascinating to talk to you. Philip Lando there, who is an employment lawyer at Lando Law Solicitors. And if I get the sack, I know where I'm going.
I'm intrigued the point that you made about the whole, because as I said about when, so if you look at, take the Arsenal example of how they've got to the point of creating a captain there, voted for by the players. They can't possibly have protocol
higher contractual obligations as a result.
Written down, because I've never been in a position where I've actively been club captain anywhere, but I've never been aware of the fact that there's a separate set of protocol that they're expected to live up to, because you use the word draconian, but it's absolutely right, because as the captain he should be held to a higher degree of responsibility.
But not just responsibility, legal responsibility. That's seems
crazy.
Baffling. And if I were an Arsenal player and my teammates were voting on who the captain is, I would then be going, no thanks, I do not want a more stringent contract. Even if I were a player being offered it by the manager straightforwardly, as it normally is at any other club, you'd be thinking, well, it's a great honour, but I don't want to have the book thrown at me in a court of law. I don't see how that can be fair.
It's a strange position. I mean, Philip made so many fantastic points there, in the sense of, if you looked at it from a business point of view, if you had someone who was more senior or deemed to be, and this is again, it's a grey area, deemed to be in charge of what was going on that night. Therefore, he takes the fall because he's the senior member.
He's one of the blokes there drinking too much beer.
With the other blokes that were drinking too much beer that then got into a car. Someone else. I mean, we were chatting earlier on, Johnny, weren't we? I was looking at an article on The Athletic, fantastic source of footballing information, but the kind of details of the fact that Keogh was left in the back of a car on his own,
bleeding out,
and it was by chat. I mean, obviously, the time would have elapsed where somebody would have gone, something's a bit wrong here, let's sort this out. But an ambulance drove by just passing by and found,
like, oh look, there's a wrecked car,
and someone in the back of it unconscious. That, I mean, again, we're not here to defend Richard Keogh in the sense of whether it's right or wrong, but we're just discussing the relevant points with it. And when it comes to the more you hear about it, the more you read about it, the more you hear opinion on it, the financial aspect of it is coming more to the fore, isn't it? It's about saving money.
Yeah, they've made a financial decision here, absolutely no question. And to an extent, I actually am happy to defend Richard Keogh. He has obviously done something fantastically stupid, and he obviously should have, as we all should, when you see a mate who's had a beer walking towards a car with car keys, take them off them and put them in a taxi. He should have done that. But actually, he doesn't even have a driver's licence. No. He wasn't driving the car. He wasn't the idiot who crashed it. He's been silly while drunk. The other two, for me, have done something actively immoral. And the idea that they keep their jobs and he gets thrown under the bus seems a little bit harsh, which is why, of course, we've seen the likes of Jeff Hendrick, of Harry Arter as well, coming out in support of Keogh. Sounds like it's going to run and run. Derby County, bet any money, will be looking to keep this out of the courts. They'll be wanting to keep the media attention down. Sounds like a settlement is likely. Talking to Philip Lando there. Coming up, lots more on Arsenal, on Chelsea, and of course on the England rugby team.
Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought? Let's just say it wasn't money. But time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital. Paying the mortgage. And. The cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer. And Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice. Soon as. I did.
Macmillan. Right there with you. Search Macmillan Money Worries.
Stop paying too much for your energy bills. Brian saved money on his at aspokesmansaid.com. Can you?
I'm Brian from Swaddling-Cote, South Derbyshire, and I saved about £400 on my energy bill with a Spokesman Said. The iSpokesman Said website was very easy to use, and the money I saved I put towards a holiday.
Compare home energy quotes from the UK's biggest suppliers in just a matter of minutes with aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
As a parent, you always want to protect your kids, so make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles and whooping cough are on the rise and can cause severe illness, but childhood vaccinations can help prevent them. Are your child's up to date? Find out more. Search online for NHS vaccinations.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
This is Love Sport.
We're talking a lot of Richard Keogh this afternoon, and this is, of course, a rapidly developing story, developing so quickly that we've actually had some breaking news on it in just a few moments.
In the last few moments I've seen, Johnny, Matt Lawton from The Times is saying that the, if you like, reason that Richard Keogh was sacked and that the other two players have managed to escape with their contracts intact, or certainly from the legal point of view, the thing that they're using is the fact that Richard Keogh wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was, I suppose, jeopardising his own safety, which probably is the sort of thing stipulated in a footballer's contract. David, you'd obviously have a better idea of whether or not that's a common thing. I don't know if that's something that has been in your kind of contracts before, if it might be a newer thing.
It's not something that like I said, I mean, the process of getting a captain into place, and again, I'm half a decade, if not more, away from the actual physical aspects of being in a dressing room, but it was somebody that was responsible, someone that played more often than not. Somebody, and again, this is a bit more old-fashioned, that was probably a defender or a midfielder, maybe a goalkeeper on the rare occasion, but somebody...
The idea that you're a moral arbiter for the whole club.
But believe me as well, what I was going to go on to say, were some of those were wonderful people on the pitch. If you're talking about...
Not people you'd follow down the pub on a team night out.
Absolutely that. So therein lies the presumption that this player who's nominated as captain, if in his contract, that everyone cedes to what he's going to say, which is utter rubbish. Utter rubbish.
This whole story is staggering me, because I thought it was incredible in the true sense of that word, in that it was hard to believe from the very start. And then I thought the punishments, if you can call them that Bennett and Lawrence appear certainly now to have literally got away with. And then this development now to have sacked this guy, the captain that's been there 7 years, been club captain, 350 plus appearances. I can sort of see where they were coming from, that they wanted to try and lower the money he was on. He's ruled himself out through partly his own stupidity for a long, long time, and at 25 grand or so a week, he would have been a high earner, even if you think maybe David not a top earner, which is a pretty scary thought for a different reason, at Derby County. And the offer, we're led to believe, was something like a 90% cut, something like 29 grand a week to 3 grand a week is what I've read being reported. A huge, huge cut that would still leave him, though, on 150 odd grand a year. He's apparently also not being offered medical rehabilitation payment, which I don't know if that surprises people or not. It seems another heartless move from Derby. Maybe it's justified. Obviously, it was his stupidity rather than a football injury that got himself in that position. But I think when you look at it relative to the punishments that the other two are getting away with, I mean, God, talk about sort of cynicality, questionable ethics, if you like, that are going on and making these decisions that are, let's be quite honest about it, essentially affecting these people's lives to a huge degree as well.
Worth noting that while Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett seem to have received quite lax responses in a footballing sense, they have, of course, both been left with criminal records, so serious ramifications for them as well. I can see why Derby have withdrawn the medical help, but leaves a sour taste, doesn't it? At the point where you've got all that money coming in from 32 Red, all that money to throw at Wayne Rooney. Yes, Richard Keogh has been a moron, but before that point, he had started 316 of their last 330 championship games. He was club captain. It's a decade of service. Even if you cut your ties, even if you're having a tiff, help the man get quite literally back on his feet.
And that's the more you hear about it, the more you kind of quantify what he's meant to Derby County over a significant period of time. I mean, either this has happened and the owner has gone, that's enough. What you've done, I found so reprehensible that's broken down a friendship relationship, working relationship, or it's an easy way to get someone away from the club that they at some stage would have probably looked to have kind of meandered towards the end of his career with Derby, because the figures that you're quoting there, Johnny, the sheer number of games, the sheer volume of time that he's been there, would suggest to me, and I know that football clubs can be quite brutal places at times, that there is some kind of rapport there. There is an affinity with the player that served a club that, as we said, has been looking to get back in the Premier League, at times has folded in the wrong instance, has times choked in a situation where that extra 10%, that extra bit of bottle could have got them out of the Premier League, out of the Championship into the Premier League, winning a playoff final. So that sense of perhaps standing by, like you say, someone who's quite obviously acted like an idiot, but we see the good in him because we know him to be this over the course of a longer period of time than he's not been. That seems to have just completely vanished. I mean, unless this has happened where he's been called in, the aftermath of what's happened, all the kind of details of it have come out. The owners and the hierarchy have had a word, and the reaction to it has been unfavourable. Where he's said,
disrespectful.
I don't care what I've done, but you're not touching my money. Unless they've gone, well, tell you what, that is the straw that's broken the camel's back there. Sorry, you've got to go. Unless it's something like that, because it just smacks of a set of people and a player that have spent a lot of time together but don't necessarily like each other.
Or even respect each other. There's got to be a respect element there as well. We'll have more on this throughout the show. I want to move on and talk a bit about coaches now. Legendary Wales and Lions prop Adam Jones joined Love Sport Breakfast this morning, and he paid tribute to outgoing Wales coach Warren Gatland, who's leaving his role after 12 years in charge after tomorrow's World Cup third-place playoff bronze medal match against New Zealand.
Personally, I wouldn't have got to what I did without him. He's, barring my parents, his biggest influence in my career by a long shot. And I played 6 years under him. Played on the two Lions tours with him. About 4 years ago when he dropped me, I wasn't his biggest fan. You don't agree with decisions when you drop after such a long time and whatnot. But certainly since the years have gone past, it's a lot easier. And what he's done for Welsh rugby is he's changed the course of it.
Quite powerful words there, David. Does that resonate with you in relation to anyone you worked with in your career?
It does. Paul Hart was the man that kind of sticks out when you hear those types of words, who was the youth team, or academy manager, it would have been called back then, at Nottingham Forest when I left school. And that is a really formative and important relationship that you have at that moment in time. You leave school, as was the case back then. I left school at 16 after your GCSEs. You move away from home. You move into a situation where fresh blood comes in, and we're all in the same position where there's older lads there that have got a year under the belt of being away from home and getting used to what the professional sporting world is about. And he's absolutely key. He was there to be a confidant. He was there to be a drill sergeant. He was there to be a man that would listen to problems, to offer you advice, to offer solutions, to offer you love, support and comfort as and when you need it. But my God, the stick was there as well if things weren't done in a specific way, which stood us in good stead. I'm not just saying me, but the lads that were there as perhaps young professional footballers, to know that this is a glorious profession to be in if you do it right and you get the success that you richly deserve for what you put in. But if you play at it, if you toss it off, then you're an idiot for being in a position where you don't fulfill your potential.
You are indeed. Just quickly, to what extent is the role of the coach also one of kind of pastoral care?
It's even more so, I think. I mean, the game that we feel is slightly changing somewhat in the sense of that, yes, it's cerebral, but also pastoral is absolutely the correct word, Johnny, because it's about the human being as well as the actual athlete. And I think when earlier on in your career, you that part of it, you had to try and make sure that you could balance the two out, as in developing, especially when you're young kids, 16, 17, adolescents that are coming away from home that are expected to perform week in, week out, as and when you get into the first team. But you've got to be able to handle it mentally and emotionally. And there was, he knew which buttons to press. And as you get older, different managers related to you in different ways. Gordon Strachan was very black and white, very straight down the line. He was the kind of manager that got the most out of the players that were in front of him in his particular way. But without top coaches, top players don't develop.
That is absolutely the case. I'm sure lots more on this throughout the show on Posh Boys on Drive.
Love Sport.
Can you save money on your car insurance? Chris did, with a little help from a spokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings.
I'm Chris from Leicestershire, a truck driver. I went on a spokesman's set, which was very straightforward and easy to use for an old git like myself, and saved over £300 on my car insurance.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Brilliant, I've finally quit.
I can keep up with my kids now.
I feel like I've got my life back.
It's an amazing feeling when you stop smoking. Experience it for yourself with help from Smoke Free. Our range of free support can help you quit for good. From our app to emails, face-to-face and online communities. Search Smoke Free, because there's only one you.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U. How are you? How are you really? Modern life can be busy, and sometimes it's easier to look after others before looking after yourself. But there's only one you. And making small changes to your lifestyle now could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. So take the first step to a healthier you with our free How Are You quiz. See how you score and get personalised tips and support. From how to eat a little healthier to turning a 10-minute walk into exercise. Just search 1U.
Lots to come on Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Ooh, we're going to be talking and coughing to Tynus Delport, the former South Africa wing. I will be recovering at some pace. We're talking Derby, we're talking coaches, we're talking Arsenal, and now I'm going to have a sneeze.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker.
This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 6, MPs say guests on the Jeremy Kyle show were exploited for entertainment purposes after they were given behind-the-scenes footage from a whistleblower. The broadcaster has been accused of corporate failure of responsibility. It insists people's health is its highest priority. Jeremy Corbyn's promising to get Brexit resolved quickly if he wins the general election.
Labour will get Brexit sorted within 6 months. We'll let the people decide whether to leave on sensible deal or remain.
He's launched the party's campaign on the day the UK was supposed to leave the EU. Boris Johnson says it's Mr Corbyn's fault Brexit's delayed because his party voted against the government's deal. The Lib Dems insist they're the main party supporting staying in the EU. Meanwhile, Labour's Keith Vaz is to be kicked out of the Commons for 6 months. It's after he expressed willingness to purchase cocaine for male prostitutes. The family of the British backpacker Amelia Bambridge have been paying tribute to her online after her body was found in the sea. The 21-year-old disappeared after a night out on the Cambodian island of Koh Rong last week. Her brother Harry has spoken about meeting her again in heaven, while her sister Sharon says her heart is broken. Resident Anne Keogh danced with Amelia the night she went missing.
Everyone's numb. Poor girl's lost her life. They're taking it very hard, but they're also thinking for the family that they've finally got closure and they've got the daughter back home, so that they can lay her to rest.
The driver of a tram which crashed in Croydon in 2016, killing 7 people, will not be charged with gross negligence manslaughter. British Transport Police says the operator won't be going to court either. Sport, Carl Edmund hasn't managed to pull off an upset over world number 1 Novak Djokovic at the Paris Masters tennis. The former British top seed has been beaten in straight sets in their last 16 encounter. That's the latest. I'm Annie Green.
Love Sport Radio, on digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker.
This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening. You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. That's me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts and David Prutton. Your top stories this evening. Eddie Jones has picked an unchanged 15 for the first time in 3.5 years. That's as England prepare for Saturday's Rugby World Cup final against South Africa. Richard Keogh's wife has described the defender as a professional scapegoat after Derby County sacked him for gross misconduct despite Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett remaining at the club. And Liverpool are embroiled in a spying storm. The FA are demanding an explanation after Liverpool employees were accused of accessing Manchester City's Scout 7 system. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. I want to talk England. I want to talk World Cup final. I want to talk belief. David Prutton, do you believe?
I do. I genuinely think when you said all those weeks ago about it coming home, it could be coming to fruition. I'd like to be in the position where we go into a game that we think we can win and we go out there and perform. We put the type of full package that we did against the All Blacks and we take it into the final against South Africa and they come home and they get the victory parade that they all deserve.
With that victory parade, Guy, have they organised it yet? It's one of them where we've been hearing a lot of spin where there was an argument about whether to book it ahead of the final on grounds that shows arrogance, it shows complacency, but equally it's not very easy to shut London's roads on short notice unless, of course, you haven't had a shower for a month and like dancing on top of tubes. So what is the solution?
You caught me mid-apple, Johnny. You caught me on
the hop. Well, I caught you mid-apple and then I realised what I'd done and I filled for you.
You did indeed. Thanks very much. Much appreciated. The short answer is I think, yes, it is booked in principle, if you know what I mean. I think they have requested the permission, and if we were to win on Saturday morning, evening, Japan time, then they would sort of start to go into the process of preparing to lock down a few of, and I don't think it would be a long route. I think it would be around Trafalgar Square and a bit of the West End to allow that to happen. I think they kind of got there in time. I think if they'd waited until after Saturday's game, they could have been a little bit short notice. But we read that story a couple of days ago, didn't we? And remember, it took 2 weeks back in 2003 for them to have that victory parade. You forget that it was that long after now, but I imagine at the time, although loads and loads of people turned out, it felt ever so slightly anticlimactic for being that long afterwards. I think if you're going to have one, do it straight away, and you've got to celebrate in better style than England's cricketers who rocked up at the Oval to 23 school children and a couple of parents who were a bit bored during the summer holidays, which was quite sweet, but it wasn't a way to celebrate a first ever World Cup victory, and one on home soil for that matter as well.
You've got to do it right off the back of the win, haven't you? While everyone is still dancing in the street. That is the point.
And the irony is the cricketers got it so right in 2005 when they just got absolutely
nailed it, didn't they?
Bladdered on the bus and in Downing Street and at Buckingham Palace and everywhere else that they could think of. Freddie Flintoff, we're not sure has ever sobered up since then. Kevin Peterson doesn't know the words to Jerusalem, didn't know them back then, but it didn't bother him when he was standing in Trafalgar Square. That's what you want to see. You want to see it soon afterwards, and I think it's quite right that they will get one if we can go and do it.
There was that debate, wasn't there, after the World Cup going into the Ashes about they didn't want to get too carried away. It sounds like they should have gone for it with hindsight.
They couldn't have been any worse prepared for the Ashes as it was. You might as well have had a couple of hours on a bus thrown in there with a few beers. I think they could have deserved it, and as it was, Johnny Bairstow's defensive technique was absolutely shot, so I don't think it would have made much difference to him. He would have only scored a couple of runs fewer. But yeah, I think there is going to be a parade, and it'll be led by the victorious captain, Owen Farrell. We think we're reading a lot about his leadership, the way he runs team meetings. David, Clive Woodward called him England's Roy Keane. Would you go that far, and does it make you think of some of the best captains that you played under? Who would those be?
I can understand the comparison. I've just had a nice mental image there of Farrell being down in the big smoke, just kind of lost a little bit. Oh, it's busy down here, isn't it? And kind of just getting swamped by the sheer cosmopolitan nature of what London is. I can see where he's coming from. Clive Woodward is not quite as snarling and unwieldy, is he, as Roy Keane was. I had many different captains that were good in their own different ways. When I was at Nottingham Forest very early on, Chris Bart-Williams was captain of a very young side, and he was very much of the stick approach, and if that didn't work, he just used the bigger stick to get the best out of the young lads around him. The exasperation of being with players, because he was obviously a very technically talented footballer, and he was a lot of us young lads were learning on the job, and it was palpable how frustrated he was with us at times. But that was his way. Rob Jones was one latterly that I had at Sheffield Wednesday, a big 7.5-foot lad from Hartlepool who captained us to promotion back to the Championship. So they all did it in their own definitive little way. As we got older, I think there's less responsibility, there's less expectation on what you want from a captain. You just want a good teammate, and when you became a senior player, it was your job as well to be able to be somebody that younger players could talk to and that a manager could rely on. So the best ones for me were ones that led by example, were the first to stand up to criticism, were the first to stand up to be... I've been in positions where, having sat down and spoken to former players and managers, and having managers and players with the type of relationship where I think they were talking about Ron Atkinson and Andy Townsend was this story that I was hearing, which was to get a message out to the players. He was going to go out of his way to give the captain a rollicking for some perceived very tiny imperfection in a game, but he knew it was coming. He knew what his role as captain was to be the sounding board for what the manager wanted to get out there. So he had to sit there and take it on the chin as he's getting ripped apart for what he really wants to say to someone else. And it's the different ways that a captain's viewed and the different questions that we ask of him, I feel, that I've always found interesting.
It's interesting that being the kind of whipping boy, and that's your role. I had it once in a non-sporting context. I had it in a seminar at uni with a guy who taught me one-on-one, and I knew quite well, who was hard on me, but it meant that when he praised you, it meant something. We were in this seminar with maybe 10, 15 other people, and one of the women present made a point, and he criticised her and said he didn't think it was a very good point, and she accused him of being sexist. And he kind of went, well, okay, I'm not sexist. Moved on. Yeah. Anyway, then I was the next person to put my hand up, and I made a point. And he went for about 5 minutes. He caved my head in. He was going, Burrow, you are a moron. How could that ever be correct? He finishes, turns to the woman, and just goes, see, I'm horrible to men too. And I was thinking, yeah, you've got your whipping boy. You know who he is. But on the captaincy front, have you ever had a captain, or indeed a manager, who you have fundamentally not believed in? Because if I were an Arsenal player at the moment, I'd be looking at Xhaka and thinking, mate, what are you on?
There's not one that instantly jumps out of... We all know that in a team sport, in a club, in a football club, there is an element or in portions of seasons where you've got to kind of paste it on a little bit. You've got to go, if things aren't going well, you've got to go in with a smile on your face. You've got to go and try and keep spirits up, and you've got to make sure that you're playing that specific role. I've seen managers get to the point where there's an acceptance, perhaps. One particular element stands out when I was at Swindon and Danny Wilson was a manager. I get on really well with Danny, and I have done before and since, but the chemistry of what we had together in the dressing room was nowhere near what it should be for a professional sports club. And he brought, this goes back onto the sports psychologist element of what we discussed earlier on, brought this psychologist in to address a couple of situations that maybe we could work on very early on in the season. But it was quite obvious in this meeting that the psychologist and the manager possibly dawned on the same realisation at the same time, that this is a train wreck and nobody here is going to be able to stop this. And like the psychologist almost walked out exasperated, and the manager kind of went, right.
That must be inspirational, that.
But it could see it was the wrong players at the wrong time in the wrong place together that weren't getting...
David Prutton was there for
exactly. The bomb scare that is me was there. The chemistry was all wrong. The balance of the team was all wrong. And the team ended up getting relegated because even in those kind of first, I'd say, it was at least the second third of the season, the realisation was there that something fundamentally wasn't right about that setup, and it was doomed to failure.
And sometimes it's just gone too far already, hasn't it? And I'd say we've got two really contrasting examples right now. We've talked obviously a lot about the England rugby situation, where amazing kind of turnaround. I think everyone knew there was talent, incredible amounts of talent. As someone put it before the New Zealand game, when will we ever have the Vunipola brothers, Manu Tuolangi, Owen Farrell, not to mention all the other brilliant players that make up the rest of the team, again, an ability to beat New Zealand in a World Cup game like this. And sure enough, they went out and did it. But just 6 months ago, we were questioning not the ability, the mentality of that team. They've thrown away a 31-point lead at home to Scotland. They've thrown away, for that matter, 2 big leads against South Africa the year before. They've thrown away other big leads as well. We question the mental strength, and they've turned it around, and Mara Itoje's been a big character there, Owen Farrell as well. And then on the other hand, you've got Arsenal's situation. And I would suggest and I could be wrong, I've been wrong many more times than I've been right, but I would suggest that I can't see that following the same template. You started going down a path where there's a bit of a lack of leadership, where actually the captain himself, in this case, is massively being questioned, but I can't see it being turned around. And I do just want to, it gets a little bit petty sometimes. Who do you think should be? Martin Allen said David Luiz yesterday, the last couple of days. He's said that. Johnny, though, has been a big cheerleader for Hector Bellerin, and I know he's not the only Arsenal fan. And you mentioned his name earlier as well, David.
The point here is not just that the captain's being questioned, it's that the manager is being questioned by proxy. Because Xhaka is both considered to be Unai Emery's man and considered to be a symbol of that weak leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Unai Emery here is as at fault at Granit Xhaka, and he needs to reaffirm his own leadership. In a funny way, the most important thing isn't who the next manager is. It's that Unai Emery retakes control. He needs to stand
his hands were tied, were they not? Two of the players, as far as I know, Arsenal fans like as captains, were either Bellerin or Rob Holding, who had spent a year out.
But that's a very good point, but his hands have been untied. And what he has to do now is exactly what he won't do. He has to stand in front of the fans and the press and go, that was unacceptable from Granit Xhaka. He has been sacked as Arsenal club captain. And I have now chosen X to be our club captain.
I think he might, because I think that I don't think he is that strong a character, but I think he's a person who likes to make people think he is, like with the whole Ozil thing. I think he's seen it as a power play to not pick him, and actually it's reached a stage where he's cutting his nose off to spite his face. He's called on him publicly to apologise, Granit Xhaka, and if he doesn't, I think it gives Emery the perfect excuse to give it to someone else. And that person, probably increasingly likely after last night, because I know a lot of Arsenal fans fell in love with the fact that he gave his tracksuit top to the little mascot, is probably going to be Hector Bellerin.
It's amazing, really, to think where it's at. Just some of the tweets that we got that we were looking at before with regard to who should be put forward. One talking about his leadership qualities, Hector Bellerin's, and he showed a bit of class by coming over to hail the travelling fans. If that's the benchmark,
yeah,
then
I was gonna
my
say.
God, they're all over the place.
But at least he did it.
But that should... That for me, and in the course of games where we've played well, we've played averagely, we've played badly. I'm sorry, but you face that up no matter what. That shouldn't be deemed to be, well, look at that, it shows a bit of character. Oh, because he's not walked off the pitch telling them all to shove it up somewhere and took his shirt off and his armband off. That's utterly ridiculous. And I think...
Easy to please, I suppose, isn't it?
It's so easy to please, but it does, when you use the England example as a comparison, just reinforces the stereotype that in some instances footballers can just act like babies. The immaturity of things might not be going well. I'm getting battered left, right and centre on social media, in the game as well. You can win people over by sticking to what you're good at, really looking like you're working on things that you're not so good at, and just keeping your head down. Don't attract attention to yourself. Yes, you might have got... And I've never been in that position, thankfully, where you've come off and there's people actually actively going, thank God he's going. You know what I mean? Everyone's had poor games.
You've never been booed off?
Exactly.
No, what?
Only by my own family. But even in the sense of... Because fans... I was at the Southampton game, the Leicester game the other week, and it was an abomination of a performance. Yet, they stayed out and clapped the fans. And it was probably... I mean, of the fans that was left... It was 75% dogs abuse that they were getting. 25% people going, we understand this is token, we understand why you're doing it, we understand how it looks, but thank you for coming over and actively realising that it's been a horror show. We've paid to watch it. You've been awful. But we still realise that without the fans, you're absolutely nothing. So when you come off doing that and the shirt comes off, the armband goes down, and then we're saying, well done, Hector Bellerin, for applauding people. And how much money would it cost to go and travel midweek to go and watch Arsenal?
A lot. And not to mention a day off work, probably one way or the other, either yesterday or today, getting back from Liverpool in midweek, all the rest of it. And I think as well that Xhaka incident, I genuinely think there would have been a way back for him if he'd come out straight away and said, I'm sorry, because I think the fans love when you give them something back, when you acknowledge your weakness, your vulnerability, your human faults, all that kind of thing, I think they're at least prepared to forgive. And I think he could have come out, given a full-hearted performance next game, and they'd have at least gone, all right, you've learned, you appreciated what was going wrong and that you weren't doing well enough. You've tried to turn it around. I don't see a way back now. I think too long has passed. He's not even confirmed Emery today, has he? If he's going to be in the squad to face Wolves, this is the club captain. This is crazy, but I don't think he'll be the club captain much longer.
There was an element of what Martinez, when we look at, it's a great leader for us and we support him all the way. We couldn't think about that tonight because of the game at Anfield. We wanted to win this game for him and for Arsenal. Like he's got some form
But he's clearly very popular.
Yeah, but it's like he's got some form of illness. Sorry, he's
it's like the Man City wearing shirts for anyone who gets any kind of injury.
Exactly.
It keeps out for longer than a game.
Collateral damage of from that point of view, of what a contact sport is. But in this sense, I think you're absolutely right, Gab, because we're not questioning this player's attitude to playing for Arsenal, I don't think. We're questioning the fact that if he's damned in comparison with great Arsenal midfielders of the past, that's not his fault. No. That's not his fault at all. But Mesut Ozil was a whipping boy, but he's been... I mean, that debate still rumbles on the fact that everyone's lauding him. Oh, he should play at the weekend. Yes, but you'll batter him when he goes completely non-existent in a game where you really need him. So,
but he should play at the weekend.
He should, but it just infuriates a kind of a neutral, because it's... What do you expect? What do you want?
For you, David, where do Arsenal fans rank in the bad fan index in English football?
Having worked... I played at Highbury, and having worked at the Emirates, Highbury was a ferocious place to go and play football. But having taken in a game at the Emirates and been party and been a witness to what can only be described at times as just a strange sensation of a football match, of spectators being exactly that, people that are watching something, not people that are actively involved in what's going on. Seeing teams go there, getting results, playing well, not looking like they're particularly intimidated by the atmosphere. Yes, perhaps that's a broader debate about football going deep into the 21st century, of what it is as a consumer, as a way of getting customers in, and what the actual experience is. But I don't know. Business-wise, it was a wonderful decision. Trophy-wise, I don't know. I can't tell you what they are. You tell me. You're an Arsenal fan. What are they?
No idea, mate. No, honestly, no idea. And therein lies the problem. Work to be done for Arsenal. Coming up, we're talking to former South Africa wing Tynus Delport.
This is Love Sport.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Every day someone dies waiting for a transplant. From spring 2020, the law around organ donation in England is changing to allow more people to pass on more organs to save more lives. Unless you choose to opt out or in an excluded group, all adults will be considered as a possible organ donor when they die. Whatever your choice, make it clear to your family and closest friends to ensure your decision is honoured. To find out more, or for the choice to opt out, visit organdonation.nhs.uk. Pass it on.
As a busy mum, you're juggling loads of things. And when your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics to help them get better. For things like sore throats, coughs and colds, you can get advice from your local pharmacy. And you don't need an appointment. To find your nearest pharmacy, search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at a message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
Love Sport.
You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. That's me, Johnny Burrow, Guy Watts, and Love Sport's very own David Prutton. And we're fortunate to be joined on the line by Tynus Delport, former South Africa wing, who played in the 2003 World Cup. Good evening, Tynus. Thanks for joining us. One change for the Springboks. Cheslin Kolbe comes back in. Just how dangerous is this guy?
Yeah, no, he's certainly exciting to watch, and unfortunately he missed out last week in the semi-final because of that injury, but it's great to see him back, and hopefully he's fully recovered because he can change the makeup of the game. He's electric, he's got phenomenal feet, and he gets through the tiniest spaces where you wouldn't expect anyone to come through. And I know there's been a little bit of criticism about how the Springboks play their approach to the game, but he certainly is one of those guys in the team that can certainly ignite the way they play and really cause difficulty for the opposition.
Tynus, does it favour South Africa when we see the reaction to England's performance and the win against New Zealand? It's all been ramped up, talking about how they're going into this game off the back of an elated performance and beating one of the real superpowers of team sport. Does that mean that that takes a bit of the focus, the attention of South Africa, which would be to their benefit?
No, it certainly does. England are clearly the favourites going into this match. It was a wonderful performance last week against the All Blacks. You know, if I'm brutally honest, being a South African supporter, it is probably a little bit of a surprise that the Springboks are in the final. If you take into account where we were this time last year and where the team has come from. So certainly all attention is on England, and rightly so, because of their journey, the way that the team's developed. And, those phenomenal performances. They've beaten Argentina, they've beaten Australia, and they've beaten New Zealand to get into this final.
Tynus, how are you expecting South Africa to play? Should we, as England supporters, be expecting you to spring a surprise on us?
No, I don't think anything will really change, in these few days before the World Cup. I think that the plan was set and decided upon. We could clearly see the way that they approached the playoffs. Against Japan, then against the Wales, it was very similar. It's about squeezing the opposition, putting them under pressure deep in their own territory, and not taking a lot of risk in your own territory. Yes, there might be the flicker of excitement if Cheslin Kolbe catches the ball and there's a bit of space for him, but it's going to be a very similar approach to what we've seen in the semi-final.
Tynus, can I ask you about how you feel about that approach as a fan and how South Africa fans generally feel? Just because at the start of Rassie Erasmus's time in charge, I remember that series, England against South Africa, last summer for us in England, and it was a thrilling series. Those first two games in particular were brilliant to watch. The first test was something like 42-39, and South Africa were brilliant. I think Cheslin Kolbe played that game, or certainly a couple of exciting wingers were playing. Faf de Klerk was brilliant, and you looked a really exciting team, not just a good one. So why has he changed his approach so much, and why has it become so, if you like, predictable and slightly negative?
Yeah, I think they would have done their analysis and their research around how to approach. I think they very much based it on the way Wales won the Six Nations, how they were successful against Northern Hemisphere opposition earlier in the season. And then it's about taking the opportunities when they do arise. And unfortunately, when you do get into these stages, semi-final, final stages, there aren't as many opportunities, as in this pool stages or in a test series. There's a lot more pressure, a lot more at stake at these, in these games. And it's about being patient to really capitalize on those opportunities. I personally think, it's not the most attractive rugby to watch as a fan from the outside, but it is effective. And we saw against Wales, unfortunately, both teams tried to play the same way, and it didn't create a lot of opportunities. I think in the end, Wales actually kicked more than South Africa did. So it is about those one or two opportunities when they arise, and then capitalizing on the back of that. If you look at the history of Rugby World Cup finals, mainly in the modern game, there's not been a lot of tries scored. Apart from the 2015 Australian v New Zealand match, there might have been one try in the final. So winning a Rugby World Cup, historically, it is about pressure. How do you handle the pressure and taking your penalties when it is there? As a spectacle, unfortunately, it doesn't always rise to the occasion. But at the end of the day, this is about winning a Rugby World Cup final.
Tynus, talk to me about Faf de Klerk. Obviously a prodigious talent, but is he not that popular back home?
No, I think it's mentioning in his name, and you get different responses. I really feel sorry for Faf de Klerk. He's dynamic, he's exciting, he looks at opportunities. He's been asked to play a game plan that is not his natural game. He's been asked to kick a lot of high contestable kicks, and that's probably the one aspect of his game that really needs a bit of improving on. He is very dynamic, he's energetic, he's a bundle of energy, and you can see that really coming through in his defense, where I think he's been given a little bit more freedom to read the defensive plays and hit out when he sees opportunities to put pressure on. Unfortunately, in the attack, I think he's very much playing to script for what the team wants. And, I think that what people don't understand really is the fact that he's playing under a plan and not really being let loose and play his own type of game.
And Tynus, whatever happens on Saturday morning, it's a historic day for South Africa because you have your first black captain of the rugby team, Siya Kolisi, who was born one day before South Africa's apartheid laws were officially repealed in 1991. If you do win that World Cup, even if you don't, how important is that for South African rugby and for South Africa as a whole?
No, it is massive, and it's always been part of the politics in South Africa. That memorable moment when Nelson Mandela walked out in Francois Pienaar's shirt, handing, in the first World Cup in 1995. The next moment was Thabo Mbeki, the president, then celebrating with the team, John Smith's team. This time it is, it's going to be immense if a African captain, a real South African captain, can lift the trophy, and it will be phenomenal for the road that not just rugby in South Africa but the whole country has gone. That we would have Siya Kolisi lift the World Cup. It's just a phenomenal goodwill story for the country.
It is indeed. Tynus, really lovely to talk to you. Thank you for your time and good luck, I suppose, although I don't mean it. I like you, but I want England to win the World Cup final. Tynus Delport there, former South Africa wing, giving his take on the World Cup final from the South African point of view. We got to back England. It's difficult, that. Good luck, but also I hope you lose. A big part of it will come down, of course, to that key man, Faf de Klerk.
It really will. I remember that first test, the one I mentioned to Tynus just there. What a game it was. It's one of those, if you get a spare 80 minutes between now and Saturday morning, you probably won't, but you could do worse than use it to watch that first test from that series last summer. David, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that. If you've got a spare 80 minutes...
Just watch things in real time, guys. It's annoying me, the fact that you just watch recordings and stuff.
Actually, wait, get this. I did watch that recorded late at night. I had to stay off my phone all day. I was so keen not to know the result. I got back to my flat and watched it on my own late at night. And I watched the England-Ireland game in the Six Nations, which was also a really big game and a significant win for England.
It's like an onion, isn't it? It's got so many layers and a bit smelly. But other than that...
And a bit like an ogre.
And I make a lot of the people I'm near cry. But I did have a joke about Faf de Klerk that I think was the reason that Johnny Kane's me on this one. So I'll just give you that one quickly because it's reasonably amusing if you like your rugby. Faf de Klerk, he was catching a domestic flight in Japan and he sat down in the aisle seat. He noticed the guy at the window. He gave him a quick sideward glance and then carried on reading his book. He's convinced that he hasn't been recognised. So what he's done, he's left his passport open in full view of the guy at the window. There's still no reaction though. So what he does, he gets out his number 9 South Africa rugby shirt, puts it on the tray in front of him, but there's still no recognition from this guy at the window. So he's got his pen out, he's ready to sign an autograph, a shirt, whatever it is the guy wants, but he can't contain himself anymore. So he taps the guy in the window seat and he says, "Excuse me, do you know who I am?" The bloke in the window seat says, "Yes, you're Faf de Klerk, you're the Springbok scrum half." So Faf has a big grin on his face and says, "Yes, that's me." And the bloke in the window seat says, "Do you know who I am?" And Faf replies, I've never seen you before. Who are you? The bloke says, let me introduce myself. I'm Hondre Pollard, your fly half.
It's because he doesn't pass it.
He's always kicking.
Gets it.
Exactly.
Yes.
South African rovers creasing up in their cutters on the way home.
We're very fortunate here on Posh Boys on Drive because we have Guy Watts as part of the team. He's a world-class producer.
Integral.
He's a brilliant co-host and also, it turns out, a top-draw comedian. More comedy gold throughout the show. We're going to be talking a bit of football, a bit of rugby and finding out what's coming up after 7.
This is Love Sport.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Follow @Love Sport Radio on Twitter for all the latest news, views, competitions, and the best bits from your favourite station. Love Sport, the station giving fans a voice.
As a parent, you always want to protect your kids, so make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles and whooping cough are on the rise and can cause severe illness, but childhood vaccinations can help prevent them. Are your child up to date? Find out more. Search online for NHS vaccinations.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
When looking for the best possible deal for his car insurance, Jim went on a spokesmansaid.com and saved hundreds.
I'm Jim. I'm a radio presenter based in Glasgow. I couldn't believe how expensive the car insurance for our Citroen C4 Picasso was going to be from my existing insurer. I went on a Spokesman Said and saved an incredible £600. Just amazing.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
This is Love Sport.
There have been a sequence of accusations of bullying levelled against former successful footballers in the last few months. We're going to be talking about the latest in just a moment. But first of all, Guy Watts has all your latest sporting headlines and weather.
And a few more jokes for you guys as well.
No!
No? All right, just headlines. Okay. Tottenham have handed out indefinite bans to 48 fans who sold tickets to Red Star Belgrade supporters last week. The Serbian side were banned from having their followers at the Champions League group game in London as a punishment for racist behaviour in the qualifying rounds, but a large number of the away team's fans were able to make it in. Carl Edmund hasn't managed to pull off an upset over world number one Novak Djokovic at the Paris Masters. The former British top seed has been beaten in straight sets in their last 16 encounter, going down 7-6, 6-1. Edmund had been on an 8-match losing streak before recording back-to-back wins at the event in the French capital this week. England head coach Eddie Jones says he's excited by the prospect of his team playing even better in the Rugby World Cup final. He's named an unchanged starting 15 from the side that beat New Zealand to face South Africa in Yokohama on Saturday. And former heavyweight boxing world champion Tyson Fury makes his wrestling debut this evening. He takes on the monster among men, Braun Strowman, at WWE's Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia. And weather-wise, tonight it's going to become progressively cloudier throughout the night as rain gradually encroaches from the west, although it will be a milder night than it has been of late for many. Tomorrow, low pressure around in the west of the UK. It's going to be a mainly cloudy day with showers or longer spells of rain at times, but some dry and brighter interludes are still possible. Highs of around 16 degrees. That's the latest for you on Love Sport Drive.
Thanks, Guy. Now, there have been a sequence of accusations of bullying levelled at professional football coaches, former top players in the last year or so. Peter Beardsley was recently suspended from all football-related activity for 32 weeks for racially abusing players. Craig Bellamy was under investigation for bullying in his role at Cardiff City's youth team and has since apologised if he hurt anyone with his actions there. The latest is, of course, Steve Stone, the Burnley under-23s coach, who is under investigation amid allegations of bullying. He hasn't been officially suspended, but he's been told to stay away from the club while the investigation is underway. David, I gather you know Steve Stone.
Well, when I first started as a young professional footballer, he was at Nottingham Forest, and he was one of many senior pros at that time that were they'd done very well to get the club back into the Premier League. It was a disastrous season back in the Premier League, and they've not been back since. But he was a man that I can vividly remember being very genial towards us as young lads. We were there in the boot room making sure that everything was spick and span. You got the occasional reading of the riot act by the senior players if they didn't think things were up to scratch. But by and large, the man that I spent a little bit of time with was as I said, someone who would ask after your well-being, would make sure that everything was going okay from the youth team point of view. He understood what it was like to be a young footballer coming through. But when we look at the situation that is in at this moment in time, so that I'm talking about a period of time in 1998, which when we look at how football's changed, how the perception of footballers and the development of footballers has changed, these situations, whether they're being reported more frequently or whether they're happening more frequently, it feels like there is a bit of a watershed with regard to how younger players are either A, treated, or B, how they respond to how their development is done in a certain way.
This is the thing. Have we got a kind of cultural shift going on here where it's perfectly possible that Steve Stone is not a bad person and actually isn't an unpleasant person? It's just the kind of behaviour that was par for the course 20 or so years ago is now perceived as unacceptable.
I think there's elements of that. You mentioned Peter Beardsley. When you look at how that panned out, the language that was used, I mean, regardless of whether you were brought up in a different generation of life, of football or the profession, the actual words that were being used in that sense were just utterly uncalled for. I mean, and they wouldn't fit in any generational context at all. But when it comes to, as I said, I mean, it can't. We've spoken about football for the majority of what we've been discussing over the last 4 hours or so, Johnny, and yes, it's a wonderful game. Yes, there's some glorious moments in it, and we get into it because we love it. But the actual profession of it can be pretty brutal, and if you're not forearmed and forewarned in a certain way, that could catch somebody by surprise. I'm not saying that you create rhino-skinned robots that have no ability to release any emotion or mental pressure or anything like that at all. It's about being stress-tested enough, robust enough to be able to deal with not only getting judged by your teammates, getting judged by the team that you're playing against, getting quantified by fans if you get to the point where you can play. Exactly. So we're saying he's seen that what's happened on the pitch, and there's not many people in that stadium that, if they've had a bad day at work, would get then 60,000 people come in and absolutely battering them. And that
is tough.
Yeah, exactly. But there is a part of being a footballer that you just buy into that. You understand that that's going to be par for the course, to be honest, because playing football in front of a handful of people is great. Playing football in front of thousands of people when it's going right is one of the most magical feelings ever. But you've got to realise that it's not always going to be like that. So they're going to tell you when you're not doing so well. But with regard to how we're looking at, and again, you do really have to stress in this instance that we've only seen part of the story. The details of it is something that Sean Dyche has alluded to, the fact that this thing needs to be investigated properly and in private without any form of bias in it at all, to make sure that whatever the solution is the correct one for everyone involved. And it does have shades of perhaps what Craig Bellamy went through at Cardiff City and his perception of as his way of coaching. But it's the under-23 side that we're looking at here. That
unbeaten in 13, by the way.
Under-23. This is
not children.
No, this is beyond adolescence. These are young adults. And this is me not saying as a 38-year-old man going, well, it's a generational thing. That young people of a certain age can't deal with what we were presumed and told to deal with, basically, if you want to get somewhere. So if it, and I'm not saying that makes it any better or it should be any differently, but if it's suddenly an under-16s coach that's dealing with kids who are dealing with a lot of things at that specific moment in time, adolescence, puberty, growing into themselves as people, and on the top of that, you're in a sport where you're meant to be having fun, but someone is just going at you and bullying, that's the word that's kind of coming out of all this, then that's a different thing. That when it's young adults looking to play for a team that plays a certain way, that is battling above the odds to be in the Premier League, they've got to be ready.
They have, and I think you make some really good points there, but at what point does a line get crossed between tough love, between preparing young men to be hardened professional athletes, and become bullying? Because it is possible, isn't it, in your own experience, to have coaches who are tough on you, who are also caring.
And also instances that I would think back to now and see as that being now quantified now as bullying, because of if it makes somebody feel a certain way, negative about themselves, detrimental to the mental health, then that line has already been crossed, regardless of whether that coach thinks that he can put up with it, or he had to deal with it when he was younger, or he's seen other players put up with it. Yes, it's a team sport, but you've got to deal with people individually. We've said it over the course of speaking to a sports psychologist today. Some respond to being told a certain things, some respond to simplicity, some respond to innate factual details, some respond to being told that the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's the real trick of what a good manager is. We laud them for or point the finger at them saying, we want you to get a result on a Saturday or a Tuesday afternoon. But the makeup and the chemistry of that team is a 24-hour, around-the-clock process to make sure that they feel as good about themselves as ever. So if he's in a position where he's making people feel like that, then he's already overstepped the mark.
Is there an element here, then, of people who actually just don't have very good emotional intelligence and are getting those judgments wrong, mistaking a player who does need a bit of support for a player who needs a rocket, and ending up inadvertently perhaps bullying kids who needed a cuddle?
There could be. I think emotional intelligence is such a deep and heavily detailed description of how a human being is able to interact with the environment around them, because maybe Steve comes from, again, I'll keep using the word generational, of basically what the coach told you to do, you did. And it wasn't it was a blanket approach to, right, you were all, you were all terrible on Saturday, Monday morning, meet me down by the track with your running shoes. All we're going to do today is run. Regardless of whether somebody, the right back piped up and said, I had a good game. Well, don't care, it's a team sport. Sorry, you get dealt with in exactly the same way. If things aren't going well, is it across the board a unilateral way of dealing with failure? Right, you're all actively trying to get me the sack. This is what we're going to do. So the details of it I find fascinating. I think it does make for so many grey areas because of your basic human rights to work in a profession or work in an environment that you feel comfortable in, that you feel nurtured in, that you feel cared for, in the way you can blossom. But as we know, football does seem to blur the lines with regard to what it deems to be acceptable, but what it also deems to be essential to get a player ready for top-level football.
If we end up with a footballing landscape where it is unacceptable to be really, really tough on young footballers, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if that happens, are we going to see English football producing a less good quality of player?
It depends how you define the quality of the player. If we suddenly get a lot of, which we've kind of not stumbled across, because Gareth Southgate talks about the England DNA and Andy Boothroyd talks about bringing players through, we've got technically gifted players that we wouldn't have associated with an English footballing mentality a couple of decades ago. Now we've got players that are technically similar to what we would see coming in off the continent. But if that's done in a way that helps nurture them and makes them feel slightly, I don't know, there's a sensitivity about it, which I'm trying to think if it's my take on it is, because what we're seeing now with the increase in mental health awareness and also the addressing of it is there's a band of footballers, some of whom that I came through with, not actively in the same club, but again, that kind of generation, mid to late 90s, that are now saying that not enough attention was paid to how mentally they should have approached a football career and then after it, because we are still talking about young men. We are still talking about men. If you get to 35, that's a massive part. That's well done to you. Kudos to you for staying in it for that long, for staying in it and taking everything that comes with it for that long. Yes, you've got to be good, but yes, you've got to be able to deal with it. And then, so there's just an assumption that because you've been inside the machine, that you can deal with what comes on the other side of the machine, and that isn't the case. Whereas now, we're addressing these issues that hopefully brings through a generation of not just young men, but young footballers, male and female, that, yes, they might have wonderful careers in football. Yes, they can deal with the highs and lows, but they also come out the back of it relatively normal, as being able to interact with the world around them.
Yeah, I think that is the salient point. Really, really interesting, a complicated one. Coming up, we're going to be finding out what delights Love Sport Radio have got for you after 7.
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
Every day someone dies waiting for a transplant. From spring 2020, the law around organ donation in England is changing to allow more people to pass on more organs to save more lives. Unless you choose to opt out or in an excluded group, all adults will be considered as a possible organ donor when they die. Whatever your choice, make it clear to your family and closest friends to ensure your decision is honoured. To find out more, or for the choice to opt out, visit organdonation.nhs.uk. Pass it on.
This is Lionel, another very happy person who saved themselves money at a spokesmansaid.com.
Hi, I'm Lionel from Peacehaven. I took note of what the spokesman said and I saved £484 per year on my energy, and I recommend everybody does the same.
A spokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings. Compare, switch and save with a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Brilliant, I've finally quit.
I can keep up with my kids now.
I feel like I've got my life back.
It's an amazing feeling when you stop smoking. Experience it for yourself with help from Smoke Free. Our range of free support can help you quit for good. From our app to emails, face-to-face and online communities. Search Smoke Free, because there's only one you.
Have you been injured in a road traffic accident, an accident at work, or an accident anywhere? It's your right to claim. You could be entitled to thousands of pounds in compensation. Harris Fowler are specialist personal injury solicitors with a 96.9% success rate, offering no win, no fee. Call 0800 213 214 to find out if you have a claim. 0800 213 214. Harris Fowler, the personal injury solicitors. Win rate based on cases issued and finished between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2017.
Love Sport.
Well, it's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive, and David Prutton is dancing.
Shapes have been thrown.
Shapes have been thrown.
Rug is being shredded.
Because, babe, this is always our special co-host favourite part of the show. Charlie Hawkins is in the building, and he's going to be in the building until 11 o'clock. He's carrying you forward for those fan shows. Charlie, what do you got coming forward from 7?
This is my favourite part of the show.
Stop
Lads. You three, the Musketeers. I want to join. I want to be the fourth one. The young D'Artagnan.
You need some knitwear, some...
Is that what I'm missing out on?
It's a strong D'Artagnan reference, by the way. I'm very impressed. JB. What's coming up from 7?
I googled it beforehand. Thought I'd get that right. Coming up at 7, it is the Spurs show. Obviously, a massive game on the weekend. They were playing Liverpool. Liverpool have not lost at home for 2 years in the league. Spurs searching for that first away win since January. They didn't get it. They scored within 90 seconds. Came quickly off the mark. And I actually think, David, it's interesting to see what you thought of this. I think going up so early hindered them because, do you change the game plan, and they almost... They tried to hold on, didn't they? And I don't know if that helped them. Liverpool swarmed them for 90 minutes and obviously came out 2-1 winners there.
It's a hell of a long time to hold on to a lead, isn't it? You're absolutely right, Charlie. I mean, if you get it just after half-time, even then holding up for the best part of 45 minutes would be tough. But as we well know, what they've managed to create there, two contrasting runs of form at home, obviously for Liverpool, away for Spurs, it always felt like what has been created at Anfield, or recreated, sorry, not created because it's not the first time, is it? But what Klopp's managed to do there is turn that place into an absolute fortress, and it just means that you've got to not only be tactically and technically at your best, but emotionally and mentally, because that wave of red that just coming and coming and coming, all in the manager's image. It's like being, I don't know, dished on the chin in the opening round of a boxing match and just staying on the ropes for the rest of it and hoping that at some stage you win on points.
Do they still think Pochettino is the right man for the job? The Spurs fans keeping the faith?
They do, but they really want this away win, and it's been a monkey on their back for a long time now. They're chasing this away win. It's another trip to Liverpool this weekend because they play Everton at Goodison Park, but Goodison Park holds good memories for them. They have a brilliant track record there, so hopefully they'll get the away win that they are searching for.
Fingers crossed. Then from 9, it is the Charlton Fan Show.
Charlton Fan Show, 2-2 on the weekend, should I say, to league leaders West Brom. This was a lively game. I watched it, a real classic encounter. So many chances, so many talking points. Both teams had real good chances to win this. A few incidents, a soft penalty for Charlton to get that equaliser in the 94th minute. Josh Cullen securing that point for Charlton. But to be fair to Charlton, I'm not sure if Robson Carnews, and what a finish it was for him from West Brom, but I do think he handled it. And I think if VAR was in the Championship, and Lee Bowyer mentioned this, that one would have been brought back. What did you make of it?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It shows the fine margins that they've got to deal with, and that the broader debate about that is we're looking at a team in West Brom that's looking to get into the Premier League. Charlton, if they're anywhere near the mix-up, would have had a fantastic season. But it's the status of the club, the money that's on offer, the fact that you get back into the Premier League, it can change the next 5-10 years of a club's existence, and we're still at the mercy of decisions such as that. I love the fact that there's the human element of it. That's just the way it goes. But because they've got it in the Premier League, you get the feeling that obviously there's a technical aspect whether they can fit into the stadiums. But as it trickles down and the managers make more of it, it's going to be something that they'll look at.
Certainly is. Then from 10, it's the David Prutton derby. And David, Southampton, your former employers, tough couple of weeks.
It's been horrendously tough. And they obviously went to Manchester City in the week and just said, if we get done anything less than 5 that'll be fantastic. Because it was, yes, I was going to try and mitigate then, having Ryan Bertrand sent off very, very early. But even then, it just fell to pieces. And I had an interesting conversation with James Collins, who was a guest for us when we did the South Wales derby last Sunday. Said he remembers being at Manchester at Villa against Manchester City, and he said they were 3 down after 15 or 20 minutes, and Richard Dunn just made the executive decision of pulling both centre halves next to him and bringing the fullbacks back and saying, we get done 3 today, we're not getting done anymore. We're not trying to get back into the game, we're just actively not trying to get spanked. Really? Which is, nothing was seen like that at Southampton. It just kept going, and if ever a 9-0 defeat flattered somebody, it could have been 12 or 13.
It could have been. From your point of view as a midfield player, do you take that when Richard Dunn makes that executive decision? Is there an acceptance that actually you are going to get played off the park if you try and play football?
Absolutely. And the way the story went was, I don't think the manager actively alluded to saying thank you to Richard Dunn, but was like, this is now me talking about us getting done 3 rather than us getting done 7, and what that could possibly happen and affect the rest of the season. I've never been in a position where that's actively been in the case. I remember being at Highbury 3-0 down after 15 minutes and just hanging on for a 6-1 defeat. I think it was by the end of it.
That went well.
Exactly.
I think I was at that game.
But I mean, because it was at Southampton and we had Arsenal in the cup final the week after. So it wasn't even Arsenal's first choice team. So everyone, and I was cup tied, so everyone went into the final thinking, good luck, lads. It was only 1-0, so that's probably because I won't play. But but there is an element of the reaction to it. 2 games off the back of it, Man City twice. So tough for them.
And what about Hasenhüttl's future? Because you talked there about the difference between 3-0 and 7-0. The difference between 3-0 and 9-0 is extreme. It's extreme for the manager as well, because he's under serious pressure now.
It is. It's a strange situation they find themselves in, Southampton. I think there's a real lack of identity. There's an acceptance that when he came in, he steadied the ship and he made sure that this team went out well prepared, ready to go to compete. But I think it's a reality check for Southampton. Yes, they've flirted with Europe. Yes, they've been in a position where they were comfortably in the upper half. It's reverted almost back to type now. They've got to make sure that consolidation, survival is the first port of call. After that, I'll be intrigued to see where they go next.
Yeah, it's a pretty worrying thought, isn't it, Johnny? Because, you get to speak to loads of people, loads of fans and ex-pros doing this show. And the worrying thing is, doing the Saints fan show, the last few weeks, it was like, we'll keep it together, the turn in form will change.
We'll only lose by 8.
Yeah, well, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And now, just sensing today and tonight, getting ready for the Saints fan show, the positivity has slowly been lost here. And that's the worrying thing. And if we're already saying we're in a survival fight in October, it becomes a very long season,
Absolutely.
Johnny.
Yeah, particularly without really being tipped for a relegation dogfight. It was supposedly, Che Adams coming in, calls for excitement. Apparently not. Talking of dipping optimism, Nottingham Forest fan show from 10:30. What's the feeling there?
Well, no, they're still feeling very positive. Obviously, they didn't play on the weekend to Reading due to a waterlogged pitch, and
such an old school reason. I love that.
Yeah,
we haven't heard of drainage.
But they slip all the way back down to 10th. But they've got a game in hand. That game in hand, they're straight back up there. This league, I think all the way back down to 10th. There's only 7 points to separate it. So there's not too much danger there.
It's going to be tight. David, are you backing them for a decent season?
I am, yeah. Why not? 20 years away from the Premier League, it's about time to pull the fingers out.
Well, a truer word was never said. Charlie, it sounds like you've got a cracking few shows coming up. I'll be listening on my way home. David Prutton, always a delight, a real pleasure. A pleasure, of course, to be joined by Guy Watts as well, as always. Stay with Love Sport Radio. It's the Spurs fan show from 7. The Posh Boys are back from 3 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be accompanying you and Thomas.
This is Love Sport.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought? Let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the rent.